We've done it. We've done it. Should come up with some kind of like theme song, eh? I used to have a theme song, I think. I was like playing like we're streaming away. Yeah. I should figure out though, how do I get like an opening to this thing where like I'm starting to stream and like I hit the button and it's like or like maybe sometimes I like to say welcome to John Radio. All John, Jon Radio. All John, all the time. Jon Radio. Radio. I'm screwing it all up. To you, Barnabas. Good to see you, bud. How you doing today, bud? Oh, man. First stream of the new year. We've done it. We made it. 2022. And everything is going just fine. It's hilarious, man. I think everybody has gone into this year, 2022, and are just... everyone's over it. Like, what's the big meme I keep seeing is... everyone is saying, like, nobody say that 2022 is going to be your year. Nobody's allowed to say that. Nobody's allowed to be like, I feel like 2022 is my year. Like, all of the optimists are being looked at and just are being like, everyone is just like, shut the fuck, shut up. You just shut up. No one's allowed to be an optimist. Because I feel like, and I gotta be straight with you, man, for like the last, like, forever, like 10 years. Like, I know people in my life who are like optimists. And boy, howdy, does it ever just mean that you just go along with whatever? Like, let the pessimists and the realists take over for a little bit. Let the people who are walking around being like, these people are losers. Stop paying attention to them, right? How about instead of pretending like maybe something good will happen, we finally admit that these people are narcissistic psychopaths and actually do something to prevent them from destroying all of us? How about that? And as we go along to my stuff here, we'll see. You'll see. It just seems like everyone's fed up. Like no one's tolerating any bullshit anymore. It really looks like it. And the people who are, like, I still encounter them. I'll be, like, on Reddit, and, like, what was a big conversation I had that really stuck with me? I was talking to somebody about the Ukrainian situation, right? And they were dead convinced that Russia was somehow in the wrong on this. And I was like, okay, like, how do you explain the 2014 Ukrainian coup? Like, NATO couped the government in Ukraine in 2014. And they just refused to acknowledge that this event happened. Like, straight up. Like I kept circling back around and being like, okay, like, can you even acknowledge the existence of this coup? And they just would not. They just step into something else. And it's like, to be an optimist at this point, I think, is to live in, like, you literally have to just live in a delusional dreamland. And the classic conversations about how, like, oh, climate change, that's not a big deal, right? It's like, yeah, climate change is a big fucking deal. Like, it's already burning down communities. Like, we should concentrate on it. But such as being a human, such as it is, you see the post of the guy who can't afford nothing? It was a protest. I'm not sure what you're talking about, bud. The post of the guy who can't afford nothing. Like you mean he doesn't even want to buy anything? Like, he doesn't want to have anything. He just wants to have nothing, but he can't even afford that. Yeah, because, like, food and shelter, right? You can't just exist. Like, you can't just be a person living in the world, just existing. You know, you gotta do all the. The coup was a protest. I mean, it was a coup. Most coups, I suggest, would be protests. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about here, bud? Yeah, is this the one? I'm 26 years old, I'm single, and I'm a healthcare worker who puts a lot into my career and financial stability. I've been saving for a house bit by bit, little by little, and finally this year I was going to have enough for my very own house. Then yesterday, I'm met with properties in Kamloops skyrocketing up another 2 to 300K, and I'm left hung out to dry, while still renting and paying someone else's mortgage. What's the point? What's the point in getting a good paying career you sacrifice so much for? What's the point in going to school and racking up thousands in debt to help others? Boomers constantly shit on our generation, and I don't want to hear it anymore. We don't have it as easy as they had it. So I ask again, what's the fucking point? And like, this kind of stuff is actually extremely dangerous for a society. It is extremely dangerous to abandon your young professionals like this. Like, this person's 26 saying, hey, I sacrificed a lot and it's gotten me nowhere. Like, do you know what happens if that happens? People stop doing this, right? People stop participating in this, and your culture goes into a spiral downward, right? Like, what do these boomers think is going to happen in their final years? Like, what do they actually think it's going to look like? Like, and when they start complaining to us about how shitty their quality of life has become, we're going to be like, yeah, you voted for this. This is what you kept fighting for. Like, we told you not to. Over and over and over and over and over and over again, we told you not to. But you kept voting for it. You kept saying that this is the way to do it. Like, they literally kept telling us, like, everybody fend for yourselves. And now they're going to be old and unable to do that. And we're just going to, like, shrug and be like, sorry, dude, we don't have the time. Like, you kept voting for this. This is what you wanted. So go off and die, and no one's going to pay attention to you because that's what you voted for. Like, that's the ultimate tragedy of the boomer story, is that they consistently vote to destroy the civil society, right? To like consistently destroy it. But and the people who are going to suffer the most for it are them, right? Like, once they're put into these shitty long-term care homes that, like, literally are bug infested, full of mold, they're serving moldy food, right? Like old people get jammed into corners and abandoned there, right? Like, there are stories, like, the military went into these long-term care homes because of COVID and came out saying, like, yeah, there are old people who are just abandoned in their piss and shit, and they can't get, like, a glass of water, right? That's literally what's going on in their lives. And of course, it's the private long-term care homes that have it worse off. And who sits on the board of these long-term care homes? Oh, it's the very people who privatized them in the first place. So, like, the boomer generation literally votes in psychopaths like Doug Ford, like Mike Harris, who then privatize long-term care home systems, who then jam the very boomers who voted for them in the first place into these facilities so that they can make money from their suffering and their indignity in their old age. Like, that's literally the system that they vote for. And they're going to turn around and they're going to complain to us about it. And this is what, you voted for this. Like, I don't know what to tell you here, bud. And when you actually, like, say it to their face the way that I just said here, they just don't believe it. They just refuse to believe it. It's exactly the same narrative as the people who deny, like, the existence of COVID or think that COVID's not serious. They literally have to have it themselves while on a ventilator to suddenly be like, maybe this COVID thing is for real, right? Like, the trouble with democracy is that everybody gets to vote. Like, that's the bottom line, right? That's the bottom line. The trouble with COVID is that everybody gets to vote. And it doesn't matter, like, what you think. Like, you literally can be walking around being like, yes, I think everyone should be eating babies. I'll vote for the eating babies party. And there's just no vetting process whatsoever. Like, and if you attempted to put in some kind of vetting process, people will be like, oh, but my freedom to vote for the eating babies party. Like, yikes. Yeah, Barnabas, you did, like, a huge, like, dump here. I don't even know what to pick out. Don't even know what to pick out. Lots of cops being cops. That's what I saw. Lots of cops being cops. If I wanted to show a lot of cops being cops, and like look how many choices I have. Right, Barnabas is one of my more active members in the Discord. Bless you, Barnabas. For real, like look how many videos we have access to of just cops just like shooting guys, right? Like beating people up. The one I recognized was this one. This is one that I like was. This is so shocking. So you see this dude here, like this.
That major outrage.
This is like the whole. Hold on. No. I just gotta get back to the picture. Back to the picture. There it is.
Facility.
So this fella here, right? So this fella here has a mental illness, right? I don't know which mental illness he has, but he's not all there, right? This is his caretaker. His caretaker was a black man, right? The police showed up because that's how police, maybe some Karen like there's two men and one of them is black, you should come over, right? Like that kind of nonsense. And this fellow is lying on the ground, hands in the air. This is the position he was in when the police shot him. Yeah, you think you live in a civil society. Like, you think you live in a civil society. Autistic. Thank you, Barnabas. Thank you. Like, if this event occurred in my community and the fellow who shot, first of all, the fact that the event happened at all is highly, like, I would be very, very upset about this. As y'all, exactly. KKK cops. Exactly. And the person who pulled the trigger, like, one, why does this man feel that he needs to be doing this in the first place? Two, why are your guns drawn at all? Like, these two men are unarmed, obviously. Like, obviously. One of them is autistic, right? Like, and that should be pretty obvious. But, hey, Mock, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Ruth, I didn't say hello to you. Yeah, here we go again, Ruth. Exactly. It's 2022, right? There was a moment I had earlier this morning. I was like, maybe something will have changed now. It's a new year, right? Maybe something will have changed. Nah, it's all the same. Like, under no circumstances do you live in a civil society where this shit is going on. It's an embarrassment. These people walking around being like, America's the greatest country in the world. And we're so free. We got all these freedoms. Yeah, you got the freedoms to pick like 50 different flavors of toothpaste. Those are your freedoms. But like, do you have the freedom to actually explore your own interests? Do you have the freedom to actually live a peaceful life? No. The closest that you can get to freedom in America is just own slaves. Like, that's the best that you can do. In America, you have the freedom to own slaves or be a slave. That's the freedom that you're given. Just like money, New Year is an invented meaning. That's true. It's true. Although, like, there is a rotation around the earth. Like, we don't even do New Year's right. We don't do anything right. Like, there are medieval societies who, like, the reason why we have leap years, right, is because we can't quite get it right. Like, it doesn't quite work out. And we haven't quite worked out a timing system how to do it. And there were medieval societies that were just like, oh, why don't we just, like, take, like, a week at the end of the year, right, during this period of time, and just, like, party. And that'll do it. And everybody was like, yeah, okay. And so you've got, like, societies who literally, like, at the end of every year for, like, a whole week, they would just party. And I would be like, yeah, there you go. Like, no, our junky, terrible, ridiculous, like, society, if you want to call it that, like, the way we think is, like, brain rotted. Like, we're so rotten in the brain. And everything is about subserviating yourself to a class of citizen that doesn't do any work and is just as worthless as they can possibly be. And we're supposed to, like, venerate this. And no. Like, I don't know. Straight up. If I was under the age of 30, right now, like if I was one of these Gen Z kids, I would absolutely not be participating in any of this. Like, absolutely not. And if I had a kid, if I had like a 16-year-old kid right now, I would be telling that kid actively, like, do not work for these psychopaths, right? Stay, like, you can stay here as long as you need, right? That's the way that I would be telling them. Because, like, fuck this whole thing. Like, fuck this whole thing. It's garbage. This entire thing. There isn't one thing that redeems it. Not even one. They're not even trying. Like, the CDC decision to cut the amount of time that people need to quarantine from, like, 10 days to 5. Like, they're explicitly saying that the decision was made because they needed to get workers back to work. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up. We're over now. Like, the idea, even the concept that we're even attempting to be a civil society is over, right? It's done. It's every man for themselves in a very literal way. And so why participate in the society? If it's every man for themselves, then just, like, do what you need to do. But, like, scrape the bottom of that barrel. The absolute bare minimum. Because they are going to fuck you over. Like, they're going to fuck you over. That's the definition of how the society works. How your freedoms got to Iraq, I do not know. Sure, I hear about the new freedom that people are enjoying in Eastern Europe, but how do you define freedom? Millions of people in Eastern Europe are now free from employment, free from safe streets. Exactly, right? The key to leap anything is keeping Easter on Easter, seeing how in control the church was at the time. I don't know if I understand the comment, but okay. Free from healthcare, free from Social Security, yeah. Yeah, you're free to sell yourself to a market dominated by billionaires, right? Like, that's the freedom that they're talking about. I saw an article by Thorm Hartman explaining the German form of Medicare, housing, basic income, school, and it's amazing. It's an amazing country. Well, I mean, for God's sakes, like, if I experienced as a people, if I experienced something like what happened under Hitler, like, yeah, I would be really, really interested in preventing that from happening ever again. Like, significantly. Like, you're literally the society that gave rise to a genocidal maniac, who incidentally was, like, carrying around a book saying, yeah, when I get power, I'm going to commit a genocide. Like, Mein Kampf, he's very explicit. He's no fucking around. He straight out is like, I am going to kill the Jews, probably the communists. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah. 30% of the society voted for that guy, right? Like, you got to start asking yourself significant questions as a German, right? And I feel like I'm seeing the same thing in our society, right? At least 30% of our society has just gone completely off the rails. Like, literally, they want to destroy homeless people. They're just completely fine with it. And it's like, what do you think is going to happen here, guys? Like, what do you think is going to happen? And I'm having, like, pretty regular conversations now with people who, like, are off the rails completely. They don't think climate change is an issue. They are racists. Like, they think that homeless people should be rounded up. Like, this kind of it's become almost banal. Like, very common. Right? AB, good to see you, bud. I always look at the memes of high technology, flying cars, and always think to myself how we could achieve a future society with a barbaric means of production. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, there is a level of, like, just dreaming. Like, are flying cars, is that really something that we're actually interested in? Like, how serious are we about flying cars? I've always, even as a kid, I was just like, this would never work. You're telling me that we're going to give these guys, like the guys that I grew up with, you're telling me that we're going to give these guys a car that can also fly? Nah. Nah, dude. Like, it's bad enough that we have guns. Leap days came about because the church was adamant Easter stay. Oh, yeah, okay. I feel like it's a problem it's... Sorry, guys, I got, like, a hair in my mouth. Sorry, this is a bit gross. Where did that hair come from, I wonder? The leap day thing seems to be like, even Julius Caesar grappled with that, right? Incidentally, if I was Julius Caesar, I would be over the moon that we are still using his calendar. he'd like look at it and be like, oh, you're still using my, oh, that's nice. It's been like 2,000 years. We're still like, yeah, the Julian calendar. That's fine. He'd be like, my boy jammed in a month of his own. What a scamp. You ever notice that? Right? It's September. Sept means 7, right? Well, but it's the 9th month. So what the fuck is that? And then October means 8, but it's the 10th month. November, Nov is 11, or is 9, but it's the 11th. So it's like a shift of 2 months. Well, it's because July was named after Julius Caesar. He like jammed a month in there and just shoved them back, right? And then his son did it again and just shoved it back. It was just like, yeah, Augustus, right? August. And just shoved them back. Born to blaze, learns to draw. Love that name, dude. That's awesome. Good to see you. Don't think I've ever seen you in here, bud. Hope you're here to participate. How long do we have before robots take enough jobs for unemployment to get to a dangerous level? We're already there, dude. Like, we're already there. Like, and it's happened before. This is something that people don't actually think about. We all used to be in agriculture. Like, everyone was just making food. And we had to, right, to survive. Because the technology wasn't to a level where we were able to actually sustain ourselves otherwise, right? So most labor went into making food. This is true throughout most of human history, like upwards of 90% in some societies. Now it's 2%, right? Really think about the dramatic shift in labor that has occurred because of the automation of agriculture, right? So like we're here right now talking about like, oh, what'll happen if we automate things and there'll be a great... Well, that's already happened. It already happened. And recently, right? Not very long ago, like within living memory, we shifted from everybody needs to work on farms and fields and needs to be somehow involved in the agricultural procedure to make sure everybody has food, to it being literally 2 to 3% of the society is all that's required to be involved in the agricultural system. And so where did all the labor shift to? Well, by and large, it went into retail and service, right? All of these like restaurants and burger flipping jobs that the agriculturalists made fun of, the conservative types make fun of, but that's like the backbone of the economy. And now we're all rebelling against it because they're shit, right? And we're tired of serving these Kevins and these Karens and these Kens and these absurd nonsense people, right? But then also another large section of the economy shifted into financialization, which is worthless. It's just a worthless form of like taking money and turning it into more money, which is completely pointless and is actually a negative drain on the society, but by a huge amount. So like in my view, we've already gone past this idea of unemployment being at a dangerous level. We just retreated into illusion, right? We retreated into delusion and illusion. And instead of saying, oh, we only need like 2 to 3% of the society actually performing agricultural work, we should allow everyone leisure time, and we should create an open society where everybody can just pursue what they're interested in and let people do what they want. Instead of that, we told an entire generation, oh, you got to go to college, right? You got to go to university. And then we sold all of those people to the capitalist death cult, which is the billionaire class that owns the labor market. That's exactly what happened. And it was all done with this kind of like, well, hope it works out. And it fucking didn't. Because guess what? If you don't have a plan, you don't make a plan. If nobody in your society is responsible for looking at the meta of your society and saying like, okay, what'll happen if, and oh, let's make a plan, an idea, and like, what do people actually want, right? If nobody's actually interested in that, like, and we're not, we live in a society where like, let the free market decide, right? Like, we're constantly told, let the free market decide. That's no different than saying, let chaos reign, right? Chaos brings order. That's been the prevailing ideology of our society for at least 40 years, if not longer. Chaos brings order. Let chaos reign. And this has been the result. Well, and Barnabas, you bring up China. Like, China does have a plan, lots of 5-year plans, but they also have a 100-year plan, right? China has a 100-year plan and then 5-year increments, so that they know that they, like, you can't just plan for 100 years, but they have like a long, like, an idea of where they want to go. And they can do that realistically because they're a 4,000-year-old civilization. Like, they know where they've been and they know where they're going. And every 5 years they redress it, and they go and they take a look. Okay, how we executed? How well did it go? Like, what mistakes were made? What could we do to refix it? What are the people saying? That's an important part of the Chinese system, is that what are the people saying? Because it's one thing to come up with a plan, but then if everybody hates it, right? You got to be like, oh, everybody hates this, and that happened in the Soviet Union in several situations. They tried to do all kinds of things in the Soviet Union, and they didn't work, and so they got rid of them, right? One key example is that they created a dual time system. So some people were working like in the evening, and some people were working in the during the day, and the citizens complained and they hated it, so they like got rid of it. It sounds like a dictatorship of the proletariat. We're using the Gregorian calendar, but yes. I am me. Wow. You know what, man? I really like that name. I am me. Just straight up, like, that's the most honest username I've ever seen in my life. Like, I am me. Oh yeah. I mean, how can you? Okay. Let's move on. Ontario government surrendering its fight against Omicron, says Nurses Association. Right? Yeah. When you've got the Nurses Association being like, these guys are fucking us over. And guess what? The Ford administration is fucking us over. It's fucking us over huge. Like, huge. The people who are still voting for the Ford administration are like detached psychopaths at this point. Like, they do not give a fuck about anything except, I have house. That's it. That's literally as far as they go. Like, if you if you ask them, like, why are you voting for the Ford administration? That is what they tell you. They literally say, I am doing well, fuck you, I got mine. Like, maybe they'll phrase it slightly differently, but it really is just like, well, I'm not going to pay for you to succeed, fuck you, I got mine. That's it. Doesn't go any farther than that. And then if you accurately call them what they are, which are detached psychopaths, then they start acting like the victim. It's shocking, right? It's shocking. All right, before we move on, as always, guys, got to pick that number. Between 1 and 10, if you're new in the chat, right? You got to pick between 1 and 10.
Here we go David for Lynch. Today's number. It's January 3, 2022.
I'm going with a 6.
10
I'm feeling
balls.
like a 6 today. Always
Each
a 7,
ball
Mock.
has a
Reliable.
Numbers 1 through 10.
For you, Mock, just getting to the point where you're like,
Swirl the numbers.
Swirl the numbers. AB in with a 4, Eziel in with an 8.
Pick
This is a good
a
spread.
number.
Good spread. Here we go. We got a 50% chance of hitting this right now.
Today's number is...
Come on, 6. 2.
2.
Womp womp bump. Little Price is Right for you. You know what, Born to Blaze? I'll believe that you were in with the lag. Born to Blaze learns to draw first time trying to hit it, hits it. How about that? Let's see this. So it's actually a 12. And for the new guys on the show, I like to randomly play a song based on what got played. Which one am I playing here? Oh, okay. Let's see if I remember how to play this and if it's any goddamn good. As I'm getting a little farther away from some of these songs that I've written, some of them I like play and I go like, oh yeah, let's see if this one's any good. Whoops. Let's see if this one's any good. And then we'll get back to the commentary and then we'll get back to all of it. I definitely don't remember how to play this song. That's amazing. Have you noticed how stupid this goddamn place is? A fiction we write as we go. Smile real big and earn food and a home, so we can all put on a show. This isn't life. This isn't life. A fantasy made just to pass the days. This isn't life. Hey, how are you? But I don't really care. A coffee, 2 milk, and a scone. Then ask the bank if that's okay with them. Then goodbye, now leave me alone. This isn't life. This isn't life. A fantasy made just to pass the days. This isn't life. I'm too tired to think, I'll just have a drink to wake up and do it again. Then I'll ask, what's the point? What happened just then? When I finally meet my end. This isn't life. This isn't life. A fantasy made just to pass the days. This isn't life. A fantasy made just to pass the days. This isn't life. That one needs some editing. I have like so much written on that song, and like it's too fucking long if I sing all of it. So I need to re-edit that one. Edits. Edits. What the fuck did I just do? I love it. I love it when there are first timers in the chat. They don't understand that at some point I'm going to pull out a guitar and I'm going to sing some songs. And you guys are either going to love that or you're going to hate that. And that's life. Isn't that life? No other stream will do that shit for you. You can go watch any other stream you want and get all the commentary, everything. No one's ever going to pull out a guitar and start singing the music that they made. You could pass off as a busker downtown. I've done busking before. It's an interesting experience, I'll tell you that. All right. Just in case you guys thought that in case you forgot that you were ruled by anybody except like a rapacious sociopath cult, Ontario raises maximum allowable rent increase as rent freezes end. So not only is there are rents higher than they've ever been, right? Not only is there a housing crisis going on, not only is there like a ridiculous thing going on, now our leaders are saying, yeah, and you can raise rent. Go ahead. Oh, thank you. That was wonderful. Especially like the belly laugh at the end. Just wonderful. Well, that's nice, I am. That's nice. Oh, what a beautiful comment that is. That makes me feel a lot better about that song, I gotta tell you. This is the kind of song that I always worry that like I play this song and it's gonna put people to sleep. You know what I mean? Like I could just picture people just kind of tuning out of that song. But no, if that's what a wonderful piece of feedback. Lovely. Thank you so much, I am. That's nice. So like, imagine you're the premier of this place, of this province. You just go through a big crisis. You know there's a housing crisis going on. You know that rents are outrageous, right? Like, people are paying upwards of 60% of their income on rent. And your instinct is to let people raise rents even more. Do you guys know what the maximum allowable percentage of income was? Here, I know that there's new people in the chat who definitely know this because I talk about this from time to time, but I know there's at least 3 of you who I don't see that often in here. In the Soviet Union, what percentage of a person's income was the legal maximum? Give it a guess. Born to Blaze, AB, I am. What do you think? What do you think? Give me a percentage. What percentage of a person's income were you allowed to charge them in the Soviet Union? What was the maximum? Right? Let's get some guesses in chat. Let's get some guesses in chat. Ford, this was a hard decision that we refused to make until the very last minute. From the Beaverton. Always nailing it. Always nailing it. After canceling school classes for another 2 weeks, less than 2 days before they were set to resume, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said it was a very difficult decision he would have made weeks ago. I decisively procrastinated on this for over a month despite epidemiologists screaming at me for what would happen with the spread of Omicron, said Ford, whose press conference was delayed for over an hour. No one could have ever anticipated this happening except for the people who told me this would happen over and over again. All right, here come the guesses. All 3 of you participated. That's nice. AB, you did that thing. You knew that it had to be something outrageous, right? So you're like 10%. Let's outrageous. But I am and Born, you both said about 25%, right? A quarter, 25%, okay? The actual answer, 4%. It was illegal to charge any higher than 4% of a person's income on rent in the Soviet Union. Communism fails wherever it's been tried. Imagine living your entire life under the Stalin regime as a renter, 4% of your income. That was the amount. How much more money would you have in pocket if instead of spending 60% of your income on rent, the way I do, right? I spend 60% of my income goes directly into rent, right? Which is essentially a subsidy for some asshole who sits somewhere and does fucking nothing, right? What was their logic of 4%? Because they wanted an actual economy that functioned. Like, here's what actually happens in our society, right? Worthless nobodies who do no work whatsoever sit wherever they fucking sit doing absolutely nothing of value, right? They own the property, so they hire a property manager to extract the maximum amount of wealth that they're allowed to, and that's going up under Doug Ford, who is a rapacious psychopath. And so what happens? All my money and all of our money, all of the rent money goes into the hands of these worthless parasites who do no labor and have offer no value to society. And then that money just gets dumped into an offshore account, right? Where it just sits and is worthless, right? So instead of that, because that's moronic, right? That's how you collapse an economy, which is the reason why our economy is collapsing, because our society is littered with these sorts of arrangements. So instead of that, right, 4% means that, yeah, sure, you can have somebody who's kind of like sitting around, like not doing much of anything. But instead of them taking all of the money and siphoning it into an account offshore somewhere, right, they're paid enough so that they can get like food and like have a decent life of their own, right? But instead of siphoning money into an offshore account or siphoning money into like worthless like piles, well, the person who actually earns the money in the first place keeps it. And what do? Well, they spend it in their community and in their society, right? They go see a show. They go see all of this kind of stuff. Like this idea that you should give most of your money to a worthless person so they can jam it in an offshore account, like that's a total aberration. Like it's completely idiotic. But you see 4% is just a made-up amount for them to choose 4%. It might as well be 0. Well, no. Because if you have a bunch of properties, right, 4% can add up. Like, being a landlord is lucrative, right? It's lucrative. And then also on top of that, like, there are expenses. Like, there are things that you need to pay for. And so they just come up with, like, 4% is the amount that they come up with because it's the reasonable amount. And if they needed to increase it by a percentage or decrease it even by a percentage, they could. So, like, but that gives you a sense of how worthless landlords actually are, right? Like, instead of taking 4% of your income and then using that to actually, like, improve properties or fix stuff or do anything like that, right? Think of the poor landlords. Some of them are living from your paycheck to your next paycheck. Exactly, Rusty. Rusty Shackelford. That's a real gunslinging name right there, dude. I feel like you're gonna like quick draw McGraw on me. Democrats are literally communism. Yeah, dude, I cannot even believe that that is a thing. Anytime I see anybody say that like Democrats are communism, I'm like, dude, like you're out of touch with reality. Like, you think the Democrats are communism? Holy shit. 4% is unrealistic. I mean, it happened for an entire generation of people, and still happens in certain socialist countries. Saying 4% is unrealistic, like, why is it unrealistic? Like, landlords are worthless. Like, they produce nothing of value. They do nothing worthwhile, right? They are just a parasite that exists in the society. Like, I'm with you. We should just make it 0 and get rid of these guys. Just make it a state function. But, you know, you got to organize how you organize. I mean, that's essentially what China did. Like, during Mao's Great Leap Forward, they literally rounded up the landlords, and like peasantry would just like hang landlords, and Mao basically just went, "Well, what are you gonna do?" Right? Like, I don't. Is that a problem? Like, maybe we should actually elect people to actually reduce rent. Oh, could see where we could agree with 4% profit. That might work. Well, and I mean, like, what's the point of a landlord? Like, that's my whole thing. Like, what's the point of a landlord? Why do they exist at all? So like, to me, they're like, if it comes down to it, like, I am of the opinion that we should be rid of these landlords completely. They are worthless. Like, they do nothing of that is important at all. They are a complete drain on the society, totally. They don't even provide shelter, right? Their job is to withhold shelter unless you pay their exorbitant fees, right? It would be easy to create a state department that deals with ensuring everyone has access to food and shelter. It would be easy to do. It wouldn't be difficult. Yeah, I'm with you, Matthias. Everyone gets a free house. Problem solved. Like, here is how easy it would be to resolve this. You would go to a Service Canada, right? So you're like the Prime Minister of Canada. You set up in the Service Canada a wicket that people can literally walk into and be like, "Hello, I do not have a house. I would like a house." Right? You make most of your money in property? Okay, bud, that's you. Like, you don't do anything of value. Sorry. Like, your job is to withhold shelter from people and make them pay you for the benefit of having access to the shelter you withhold. That's what you're doing. Like, sorry. Like, you probably went into that because there's big money to be made in it, and that's true. But the process of doing that is destructive. Like, the Soviet Union, in communist countries, like, those properties get expropriated, and they should be expropriated, right? And let me be extremely clear, because people get really offended when I talk this way. I don't think you're a bad person for doing this, right? But I do think that the system you're operating in is evil, right? Like the way that slavery was evil. Like, you would find nice people working within a slave system, but they're still working within a slave system. And I say the exact same thing about this system of landlording. Like, landlords provide negative value to the society in big, significant ways. And we should reform that system and get rid of these people. Like, get them out of the system. I find distressed properties and live in them as you're a house flipper. I do add value by recycling properties as opposed to new construction. Yeah, that's a justification for it, right? Of you're a house flipper. Right? I know people who are house flippers, right? It's one of those kind of classic things to do. You go into a rundown property, you fix them up, you resell them, right? And at least you are right when you say that you are actually adding value, because you're at least fixing up the property, right? You're getting the property, you're actually renovating them, you're providing shelter for yourself as you do it, right? And then you turn around and resell it and then do it again, right? Over and over and over again. So you're like pretty low level in regards to landlording. And I would actually argue that, I would actually argue that you are doing something that is valuable, because there is a upkeeping aspect to it, right? And especially as you're living in the property as you're doing it. It's not, but this isn't exactly what we're talking about, right? Like, we are talking about the people who like own like 100 properties, right? Like slumlords and shit. And those exist and are ubiquitous throughout the entire system, right? Like, the place I live in right now, like, it's under no circumstances is it following the rules that you just said right there. Like, it's very, very much just like an empty room that is withheld from the society unless you can afford to spend most of your money on it, right? So this often happens when I start talking about things in the which is like if I'm talking about Walmart, there's going to be like a mom and pop shop that says like, "Well, business is important," and I was just like, okay, great. Like, it's great that you got like your little mom and pop shop off of the corner and you're operating the way that you can, right? But like, we're talking about fucking Walmart. Like, it's different. It's an entirely different thing. And there's a big difference between like a guy who's a carpenter who's fixing up houses in order to flip them and sell them and like living in them as he's doing that and all of that kind of stuff, and somebody who owns like 1,000 properties and withholds them from the society unless somebody pays this outrageous fee. That's only going up now. It's only going up now. Now's got to be a great time for you, to be operating, because like, you got to be able to. Although I suspect the buying part of it's probably the hardest, right? Like, the selling has got to be nice right now. The buying is probably a little aggressive for you, but I don't know where you are. So anyway. All right, moving on to the next thing. Here are some new laws coming in 2022. Ban on conversion therapy, right? Well argued. Even the conservatives are starting to get behind this. This comes out of the Christian right. The idea that we'll just pray the gay away, right? That we'll put gay people into conversion therapy and all of this. It is a form of psychological torture. That's all it is. And you don't need to believe me. You can just talk to the people who've been through the conversion therapy. Like, it's a form of psychological torture, and the end result is that you're just attempting to torture a person for being what they were born as, right? That's it. Like, there's no rationale behind it. There's no reason behind it. There's not even any evidence to show that the conversion therapy is particularly effective, right? I also try to do everything as green as possible, do recycling. Yeah, I could easily keep the properties and become a slumlord. There is no real difference. I mean, that's on you, man. Like that's you got to do what you got to do. That's what it really comes down to. What can you live with? The church torturing people? Legasp. Yeah, the profit motive is the problem. Well, and the big problem, if you ask me, bud, is like there are people in the conversation where there is no such thing as enough, right? Like, if someone was a landlord and they had a property, like everybody thinks about like the grandma that like, I've got a room I've got a basement and I could rent out the basement, but it's like literally not what's happening. Like, the problem is that there's 5 people that own like thousands of properties, like literal slumlords, and like and you go and talk to these guys and eventually you start being like, hey, like, why are you doing this? Like, isn't there such thing as like enough money? And the answer is no. Like, until they have like literally all the money, they just need more, right? It is a type of mental illness, if you ask me, right? Like the way hoarding is, right? Like if like nobody thinks it's weird if somebody wants to collect stuff, right? Like, there are collectors, great, right? But if you walked into someone's house and every inch of their house was covered in like, I don't know, collectible vehicles or something, or like collectible coins, and every inch of their house, including like piles on the floor and stuff, was covered in this stuff, you'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm looking at like an illness. Like, this is a problem, right? And I think that's just what's happening in housing, right? Is that, and well, happening in American capitalism generally, is just people are hoarders. There's hoarding going on, and they're hoarding because they can, and they have intertwined their entire purpose and meaning in the idea that if I have more houses, I'm the best, right? Like, and that's it. Like, it doesn't go any farther than that, and we shouldn't allow it. We shouldn't allow it at all. And like this idea of like hoarding, fuck that shit. The problem is that there's millions struggling to pay and on the verge of homelessness. Just give them a house. Yeah, exactly. Just give them the choice to move into your property or not. The problem is that millions of people have no choice. Yeah. Like, give the person who has no home a home. Like, take one of the houses from the guy that has 1,000 houses, right? Transfer it over. Story's over, right? And like, when I start talking this way, people will be like, well, John, that would destroy the rental market and do that. And I just went like, yeah, what's the problem? Like, so? Like, I genuinely think that this economy is evil. I call it a death cult, for God's sakes. Like, some of these guys, man, when are they going to put it through their heads? Like, I want this economy to collapse. I want it to go away. Like, I'm very much of the opinion that it's irredeemable, that it cannot be reformed. Yeah, exactly. I am. This is exactly the story I'm talking about, right? Like, I suspect very much, like, I've known men exactly like you, right? Like, who you're a working man. You get into it thinking like, I'm going to use my skills, right, as a skilled tradesman to improve houses and turn them and sell them to other people, and then move on and use a portion of the money that I make in order to get the next house, and so and on and on and on we go. And in many ways, it's got to be rewarding work for you, right? Like, it's got to be rewarding. Like, anytime I've worked in renovation or housing kind of stuff, I've been on the other side of it. I'm not a big builder. I'm a deconstructionist. So I was always the guy with the sledgehammer knocking shit down, right? Which is always fun. But yeah, like, Wall Street recently jumped into the game big time. Your last sale, I had a bidder sight unseen offer tens of thousands more than expected. Of course, right? Because the billionaires are starting to take over that market because they've run out of stuff to buy. And cannot be reformed is not a good idea. I completely disagree. Any reform that we attempt to put in will just be washed away because the society has been taken over by a billionaire class. Like, and anything you want to do, they will just undercut it, right? So it cannot be reformed. The only reform that you could put in would be the elimination of the billionaire class, which we absolutely need to do. Like, absolutely, the billionaire class needs to go away permanently. Like, it needs to be a permanent fixture where we say you can have this much wealth and not a penny more. And if people complain like, oh, you're putting a cap on success, like, yes, we are putting on a cap. We are putting a cap on destructive success, right? Like we put a cap on successful serial killers. Like we put a cap on successful thieves, right? We should put a cap on how much wealth a person can have access to. Because, and this is what's really important to understand. This is what's crucial to understand, is that there is no such thing as a benevolent billionaire. And I'm not saying like, and I'm not even talking about the accurate fact that once you become a billionaire, you lose the ability for compassion and empathy, right? Like, I am talking about very simply that systemically speaking, you simply cannot respond to the devastation you create by existing. That even if you're a good person, even if you're sitting there being like, I'm going to do nothing but good things, and I'm going to help everybody with my money, and everything's going to be great, and everything's going to be wonderful, and I'm going to build this institution, and it'll be so great and helpful. But the reality is that in order to have $1 billion, you have to create devastation in your society. There's no other way to have $1 billion. And the only way to rectify the destruction and devastation that's caused by being a billionaire is to give your money away so that you're no longer a billionaire. It's the only solution, right? So you can't reform a system while insisting that the system remain in place. It needs to go. I'm of the opinion that any money over $1 million, just get rid of it. Just be like, no. Too bad, but that's a bridge too far for lots of people. So I say 10 million. And 10 million seems to soften the blow for lots of people. People are like, oh, okay, 10 million, right? But I'm like, any earnings or any wealth over $1 million, fuck you. Get out of the fucking conversation. I'm just not interested in it anymore. Like, you're creating devastation. That's what's happening. And you can't reform that. It's not possible to reform that. You just need to be rid of it. You see the fanatics on the other side see it the same way, that is fatal. We have some issues to deal with while we can. Some things we have created take time to undo. That's just like the incrementalism argument, right? Like, there are lots of issues where, like, the incrementalism situation, it like, if an army is coming and going to kick in your doors, you can't defeat that incrementally. You simply can't. And I agree, there are definitely things that'll take time to undo, but there are things that we could do to actually help people now. Like the homeless crisis. We could simply get homeless people into houses, and we could do that. It would take like a year. Like, wouldn't be much time at all, right? Especially with the amount of money we throw at keeping them homeless. We throw a lot of money at homeless people to ensure they maintain their system of homelessness, right? And if we took the money that we were throwing at them to maintain their homelessness, we could absolutely get them houses, right? It would take no time at all. And oftentimes I find this like incrementalist argument is used it's not used to be like, okay, let's slow down, let's be realistic. It's used to shut down reform. That's what it's used for. It's used to shut down reform. It's used to try to prevent a change in the system. It's used to ensure that nothing actually gets done. And then when you actually do something, it's the smallest, most insignificant thing. And by the time you've actually done that small, insignificant thing, well, the billionaire class has already shifted so that the thing that you did doesn't actually have an impact anymore, right? That's what actually happens when you get into this incrementalist argument. And I just, like, I've seen it too many times now, and especially when we're talking about climate change as an issue, which we're about to get into here. Like, we have played this game of incrementalism so and watched it unfold in front of us so effectively that we can no longer exist in that incrementalist argument. There is an army kicking in our door. There's a comet coming to strike the Earth, right? Like, we can't incrementally move away from it anymore. Maybe we could have done that 20 years ago, but our leadership has been so faffy and so unresponsive to the issue, and in fact duplicitous, that we don't have time for it anymore, right? I support true freedom, a basic income guarantee, not something for nothing. A big payment is for our loss of natural rights due to property. Make corrections now. Support true freedom, a basic income guarantee, not something for nothing. Is a payment for our loss of natural rights due to property. Yeah, the basic income guarantee is like a really... I used to be like a huge, like, pound the pulpit basic income guarantee kind of guy, but now, like, I still support the basic income. I still do, because I see it as an emergency measure, right? We need to do something to attempt to ameliorate the suffering that's been caused by this capitalist death cult. Like, we have to do something, right? Nuclear power, for instance, 35 years to shut down a plant. It requires a functioning society to do this work. Yeah. Like, a society that actually makes plans and has thoughts. We don't have that right now, right? Like, we're very chaos, like, chaos brings order sort of place. It seems the other side just argues to keep the status quo because they profit off it simply by already being rich. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Most socialists understand this. Lenin went through NEP in Russia, Vietnam, and China, had a market economy, etc. Yeah, they didn't immediately transition. Yeah, you can't immediately transition. But like, the reason why the rhetoric gets so heated is because we're just not even transitioning. We're barely acknowledging that there are problems. Like, literally the reason why we're voting liberal right now is because they're saying climate change is real. And I'm getting to the point where I'm like, yeah, we know. Like, are you doing anything about it? Well, if we take a look at this article, right? Ban on single-use plastics. Ooh, ban on single-use plastics, guys, right? Right? 6 single-use plastic items, including checkout bags, cutleries, and straw. Like, this is the kind of thing that if it happened in, like, 2002, I would have been, like, pretty happy with. Like, if I had been a younger man and this was the kind of thing that was going on with, I'd been like, a rational, reasonable, incrementalist approach to a problem that is happening in a timely manner. Well, the town of Lytton burnt down last year, right? Kamloops is going to burn down next. Make no mistake about this, right? Like, maybe not next, but it's on the table. Like, you're looking at like a community of 100,000 people. It's going to burn down for sure. You don't need to be a genius to figure this out. And like, that we are constantly breaking heat waves, huge flooding, tornadoes. Like, the earth is pissed at us. And we're just now banning this shit. So there's your incrementalism right there. End to fossil fuel financing. So I call total bullshit on this. Like, the federal government announced at COP26 this year that it would stop new direct public finance for coal, oil, and gas development by the end of 2022 and shift that investment to renewable energy projects. So this is how the liberal government has always acted on this point. Take when their well-touted we raise taxes on the wealthy. So they raised taxes on the wealthy by 1%, right? Which they did. But that only affected like 5-6 people, right? Because there's not that many rich people around, right? And what did they do? They turned around and gave like major subsidies to the people who were affected that completely eliminated any taxation. So in the case of Galen Weston, right? Yeah, we raised Galen Weston's taxes by 1% and then turned around and like bought him fridges with it, right? We didn't mandate that he has to buy fridges, right? We bought him those fridges. And it completely eliminated the taxation. So literally we taxed money away from him so that we could buy him something. And if you actually do the math on it, you realize, oh, we actually gave him more than he gave us. Like, this is exactly the type of thing I'm talking about in this incrementalist kind of thing. And like, it would stop new direct public finance for coal, oil, and gas development. Yeah, because we've already like found and developed everything. Like this isn't like you see the trickery that they're doing, right? Like it's and it's obviously the case. It's like it's like saying I am going to end subsidies for all of my teeth, all of my wisdom teeth, and my wisdom teeth were pulled out 10 years ago. It's like, okay, like what do you do in Kalamazoo, right? Like it sounds good, and if you're not paying attention, it seems reasonable, but like we've already developed all the oil and gas that exists in Canada. We're not really building any new projects, with the exception of this pipeline that we're invading wet, sweat, and land over, right? Like, so this shift away from direct finance for coal, oil, and gas development. How about ending fossil fuel subsidies completely? How about that? Oh, can't do that? Can't do that? Oh, yeah, those sectors won't be profitable anymore, so nationalize them. Oh, can't do that. Free market. Chaos brings order. Okay. Like, yeah, the basic income is an interesting one, right? Because Matthias is right to say, like, it doesn't resolve unfettered rental increases. Like, the problem with the basic income, right? And it's right. It's accurate to say this. Like, when I first got into the basic income conversation, I was really excited by it, and I was like really pushing on it. But the more I encountered communists talking about it, and people like Richard Wolff, right? Like, the issue is that you're still maintaining the capitalist system where the capitalists have control over the means of production, right? Overproduction. They still get to decide the fundamental structure of the society, which is what gets made and what gets done. They still get to withhold food and shelter from the populace, right? We just are attempting to create a mechanism by which food and shelter is distributed into the populace automatically, which is what I really like about the basic income. But then critiques get laid, which is to say that, oh, well, if you do that, then capitalists will just raise the rent more than the basic income gives out, which is fundamentally true, right? We are dealing with a class of rapacious, vampiric sociopaths, right? At least. Like, they don't have the ability to have compassion. Like, it's gone from the way they think. And so if you create a basic income, well, then they'll do everything they can to undercut it. They'll do everything they can to absolutely dismantle it. I still support the basic income because I see it as an emergency measure to, and you said it earlier, which is that we need to do something. We need to do something to deal with. Yeah, right here, right in front of my face. Only the basic income can do the drastic measures necessary. Just like the pandemic, you can only shut it down if you give us money. Yes, that's the argument, right? Which is like, we are facing a climate change catastrophe. We must be restructuring our society into a war effort against climate change. Like, that's the level that we're talking about now. We've been so negligent and so duplicitous in regards to our commitment to our own children on the climate change file. And we're still duplicitous. We're still completely full of shit when it comes to it. With this like end to fossil fuel financing, but it ends up being for development, which we've already developed everything. So what's the point of that? That kind of like total duplicitous bullshit that is constantly coming out of our government. Instead of being like, yeah, this is a major crisis. We've got to shut down fossil fuel production. We've got to end it. It's got to end, right? And what's that going to mean? Well, it's going to mean that guys like Jeff Bezos aren't going to be able to shoot rockets into space. Private jet flights probably going to stop. All of the, extraordinary, ridiculous pollution that is done by like 0.1% of the society, right? We'll have to put an end to that. We should probably nationalize the fossil fuel industry so that we can use the fossil fuels for necessary shit instead of like making LOL dolls, dumb shit like that. And while we're doing all of that, yeah, we should have a basic income to respond. And it will take the capitalists a bit of time to restructure the society to take advantage of the fact that there's a basic income. But ultimately, the basic income ends up just being a subsidy for landlords, right? Like it's a subsidy for landlords in the corporate sector. And while I understand like the emergency nature of it and that we need to do something like that, it is like the beginning of the transition into something that's actually reasonable. Because the end result is that we've got to get rid of these capitalists. Like, they've got to go. Like, they can't exist in the society anymore. Like, the structure is demonic. It's completely, like, you have built within the structure of your society an antagonism that will never go away. Instead of the society actually being structured to work together so that all parties are going into the same sort of pursuit towards the same objectives, and even if those objectives are just like everybody chill out, right? Like, wouldn't it be great if we lived in a society where like the apex top point of the culture is everybody just chill out? Just chill out. Like, what? We're not going anywhere. Like, what's the race? What are we racing for? What's the point of that, right? That would be where my vote would go. Like, if we could vote for ideas, my idea would be like, everybody just chill the fuck out. Like, what are we running around for? Like, what are we doing all this shit for? What's it for? Right? Everybody just chill the fuck out. And and you can't have that if there are built-in antagonisms, right? So you're saying I am like the basic income changes the relationship of employer to worker. It gives the worker the freedom to quit, not working about starving or homelessness. The basic income keeps us current on rent mortgages ending in the boom-bust cycle. But that's like in a way, like, I'm not saying you're incorrect. It definitely does sort of shake things up a little bit, but it doesn't like dramatically actually change the relation between employer to worker. There's still an ownership class and there's still a working class. Those classes still exist and they still are antagonistic to one another. They're still at odds to one another. And the ownership class will, as a guarantee, will do everything it can to undercut the existence of this basic income, right? They'll inflate the currency. They'll raise rent. They'll raise prices, right? They'll do everything they can to chew away at that. Because you got to remember, the ownership class wants to pay people zero. That's the number they want. And in fact, if they could get the workers to pay them, they'd be really happy with that. Like, all of the and you can see this antagonism writ large in our politics. A guy like Doug Ford, for example, right? Like, Doug Ford works for the ownership class. It's very obvious, right? And he antagonizes the working class as much as he can. And this puts the society in a perpetual state of class war. And you can't actually get anything done in a society that's at war with itself. And the basic income doesn't actually resolve this. That's the central thing. Again, I support the basic income because I see it as an emergency measure for exactly the reasons that you're talking about. We need to restructure the society. We need to face climate change. We need to do serious shit. We need to do serious shit and start acting like fucking adults. And something like a basic income is it's the same rationale of like rationing food in the midst of a war, right? That everyone should have access to goods during a war, and so you do that by rationing, right? And when you have disruptive events, you should have something like a basic income that you can fall back into and all of this. But so long as the antagonistic relationship between the ownership class and the working class exists, something like a basic income will not be a stabilizing force. I think that's really what it comes down to, is that a lot of people start talking about a basic income and they talk about the basic income as if it's like, we'll pass a basic income and that will help stabilize the economy and that will help stabilize the society. And it simply will not. right? It simply will not, because there is an antagonistic fight going on that if you don't actually acknowledge, that there are two forces in the society that are trying to fight one another to the fucking death, then you can believe that something like a basic income will work. It's not going to, right? Maybe it will at first, right? And I actually argue that it would at first, right? You would pass a basic income, people would be able to get rent, people would be able to get food, things would stabilize, things would calm down, but you have an antagonistic class of vampires whose objective is to destroy the civil society, if not the species. Like, that's their objective. It's obviously their objective. They keep fighting for it. And as long as we maintain that, something like a basic income is just going to get blown away, right? Somehow. They will always manage to reconfigure it for their benefit. It's how it's always worked. And that's why the goal of this channel and the goal of communism generally is to eliminate these class distinctions, right? To have a single class. That's what's being talked about when people talk about the dictatorship of the proletariat. The proletariat being the working class. That the working class seizes seizes power, seizes the means of production, and the bourgeoisie class, the capitalist class, simply ceases to exist. That there's just no such thing anymore. Which is why societies like the current Chinese society is so incomprehensible to us. Because, like, capitalists keep looking at it and saying, like, well, it's capitalism. Look, it's got capitalists in it. And it's like, okay, but those capitalists are fundamentally responsive to the Chinese government, which itself is fundamentally responsive to the working class. So it's like... Anyway, big long-winded way for me to land on I respect completely your commitment to a basic income. I really, really do, because I myself support a basic income, but I see the basic income as a beginning, not as an end. And I'm very concerned about people in the basic income conversation, once something like that gets passed, them sort of brushing their hands off and moving on. And I would think to myself, no, that's when we actually begin organizing for real. Like, that's when things actually begin happening. So that's where I land. But you're absolutely right. And everything you say and everything you think and everything you talk about the basic income, I think is right. So we agree and see eye to eye on things like, in most of the tests, the big idea people started working for themselves. Exactly. But that's a problem for the capitalist class. Capitalists don't want you to work for yourself, right? They want you to work for them for free, if possible. Politicians should get the same treatment as the lowest working class: minimum wage, no paid vacation, paid only hours worked, no paid sick days. I don't think that's effective. Anytime anybody starts talking that way, I just am like, nah, that's not effective. Like, the political class knows what the game is, right? They understand. You could pay them nothing and they'd still do it, right? Because they understand that the job is subserviate yourself to a billionaire class, and then once you're out of power, which is an inevitability for any politician, go work for the billionaires. That's the job. So, like, politicians aren't like sellouts to the billionaire class because they're being paid really well when they work as a politician, right? Like, that's not what's happening. There's a billionaire class that they subserviate themselves to, and they get this kind of cushy political job, and they work it, and then when they're out of office, they get like a 6-figure salary to go talk to a group of bankers once a year, you know? Yeah, but you're right about this, Matthias. There's no question basic income is necessary and works. The issue is the continued exploitation from the billionaire super rich class, which is central. Like, if you were to create a Venn diagram of all of the problems we are facing as a people, dead center of that would be billionaires. Like, and I'm not trying to, like, and I'm trying to be real specific when I say this, right? It's not that, like, Jeff Bezos is a dum-dum, right? Or Elon Musk has got daddy issues, which he definitely does. But, like, even if the billionaire was, like, super nice, even if he was, like, a super nice guy, and you couldn't say anything bad about him, right? Let's say he was just, like, trying as hard as he could to help everybody. He wasn't, like, cynical or anything like that. He really genuinely was an upstanding citizen who actually was trying to do everything nice for the society. His existence would still be a problem. And it would be a problem for a very, very simple reason. Having $1 billion means you've extracted that wealth out of the society. You have the money. That means it's not in the economy. It's not in the society. It's not actually doing anything. And even if the billionaire was like, and I'm going to be responsive to people in poverty and homelessness, I'm going to try to, he couldn't operate fast enough to ameliorate the problems as they occurred, right? He just simply wouldn't have the capability to do so. And all efforts he would do to attempt to do these things would ultimately fail, because in order to accomplish them, it would require further and further extraction of wealth. So it's like a contradiction, just like what Barnabas said here, right? It's a paradox. You can't simultaneously have a billionaire and have a stable society. You literally can't. It's simply, like, mathematically not possible, right? And ultimately, if this billionaire was such a good person, he would realize, oh, the way to actually solve these problems is to just give my money away. And so then we end up in a very sort of biblical position where we're just straight up saying, give your money to the poor. Like, that's the way to solve these problems. Forget about creating, like, this means-tested thing or something like a basic thing or any of this, like, structure and all these, like literally put a cap on how much wealth can be earned at all, period. Anything above that just cycles back into the society automatically, right? Like, it's really telling that, like, the boomer generation is just like, well, just get a job. You just go get it, just shake that guy's hand, do all that kind of stuff. Because they did live in a society that had a cap. Like, what I am talking about is in no way fringe. This is exactly how North American society operated for decades after the New Deal. The tax on the wealthy was as high as 90% at one point, right? So there was an extreme cap that happened in the society where you just simply could not accrue huge sums of wealth. It just simply wasn't possible. That if a guy had like $100 million, he was the wealthiest guy walking around, right? And what happened? Well, the guy that was making all the money, well, he would just like give it away or sell things or like do all this kind of stuff because he knew it would get taxed away. So he would spend it instead of having it shipped offshore somewhere. And then, and the money that did get taxed away cycled back into the society. And so you ended up with these guys who could like literally, like I didn't even graduate from high school. I have a grade 9 education. I walked across the street, said, hey, can I get a job? And they said, yeah, sure, here you go. Right? Because there was none of this like penny pinching shit happening. There was none of this, how do I extract 0.8 cents from this guy and all this, because it wouldn't matter, because ultimately it would be taxed away anyway. So it eliminated a lot of the shitty behavior, right? And that's the reason why the boomers are so fucking dead convinced. You could just look him in the eye, shake his hand, right? That's how it all works, right? They're dead convinced that that's how it works because that's how it worked for them when the tax rate on the wealthy was 90%. Well, now it's 10%, right? Like, and some of these guys aren't even paying taxes. And like fucking Musk is complaining because like they taxed me and I had to pay $11 billion. It's like, dude, you made $11 billion while saying that sentence. Like, shut up. What are you guys talking about? If there's no law saying premiers can't claw back program, there's no point, honestly. Yeah, there's that too, right? And this talks about the central antagonism, right? That so long as there are people in the society, and like we do have a large group of people in our society who think the homeless should be killed, right? Straight up. Like, let's just, no bullshit. They think the homeless are a drain and they should be destroyed. And they're willing to pay more than it would cost to actually house them in order to do it. The climate fight is all or none. It will require all of humanity for us to prevent human extinction. The basic income is, as you say, just to start. Dead center is profit. Yeah, that's what's creating these psychos. Yeah, you're right about that, dude. Bill Gates Foundation demonstrates what you say. They put half their wealth at the time, and 15 years later, they're back at the top 10 wealthiest. Well, and the only reason they did this, like the Gates Foundation was never it's just another business. That's all. Like, it's just another business. This idea that it's like, oh, it's a charity thing. Like, no, it isn't. It's a fucking business, right? And there isn't... like, one of the things that, like, really hurt us as a culture and as a people is that we really did not understand how psychotic these guys were. Like, we really did think, like, and I'm talking about, like, the Obama years, right? You think about, like, the Obama years, and you think about Trudeau's initial election here in Canada. Like, we genuinely did believe that these guys were actually going to get into power and actually attempt to do something to help us. We really did believe that, because we were conned into believing that that they were like us, right? We didn't realize how psychotic they actually were. We didn't realize how psychotic the system had become. That, like, we never anticipated that they would be willing to lie on that scale, right? There's something built into the human consciousness where we cannot accept a lie. We cannot accept that a statement is a lie if it's so big, right? So, like, here's one that I encounter all the time, right? Which is the Uyghur genocide myth that exists in the Western mindset. This doesn't exist anywhere else in the rest of the world. Everybody else looked at the CIA propaganda and went, that's bullshit. And, like, you can go to YouTube and watch people walking around Xinjiang and be like, yeah, there's not a fucking genocide. Like, it's not happening. But the lie is so aggressively big, it's so huge that you go, well, it's got to be real. Like, they can't be lying about something so dramatically, aggressively huge. Yeah. Of course they can. Right? Just so when they get into power, they're like, we acknowledge the existence of climate change and we're going to do something about it. Nope. No, they're not. Like, they're just not. Like, they don't care about solving this problem. They care that you think they're solving that problem so that you'll just keep voting for them. And as long as you're willing to vote for them while they do nothing about it, while they make statements like, we're going to stop funding new oil and gas development because everything's already developed, so we don't need to do that anymore. Good talking point, right? And, like, same story, like, changes to carbon tax refunds, right? The carbon tax being literally is the program that the fossil fuel industry gave to the liberals. Like, this is actually the conversation. We here, the Liberal Party, want to do something about climate change. What should we do, fossil fuel industry? I have a program that makes sure the rest of the populace pays for fossil fuel extraction while we keep doing it. Here you go. Great. Hey, populace, we're doing exactly what the fossil fuel industry told us to do. Isn't that great? And the Canadian populace goes, yay! Because we're fucking stupid. Liberal. Like, we're so fucking dumb. Like, end the fossil fuel subsidies, right? 2-0, goodbye, right? Farewell. Nationalize this shit. We used to have in the 70s it was nationalized, right? Nationalize it so that we can actually say, like, hey, we can use fossil fuels in order to ensure that there's a smooth transition in necessary ways. And also, like, get rid of the most bullshit stuff. This idea that, like, the most bullshit stuff was stuff like straws or checkout bags or cutlery. Are you kidding me? LOL dolls. Fuck these LOL dolls. Get them out of the conversation. I cannot believe... Walk into a toy store. Like, walk into a toy store and really take a look around and really say, like, oh, that's plastic, that's plastic, that's plastic, that's plastic. Right? And as soon as you realize, like, oh, this is all fucking plastic, and then recognize that the entirety of all of it goes into a garbage bin, you can realize pretty fucking quickly that our whole society is just degenerate. Completely degenerate. We're not even attempting to resolve this. Like, this banning straws shit, get fucked. Get completely fucked. I would have accepted that when I was 20. I'm 38 now. Get completely fucked. We are an embarrassing people, and it's embarrassing what we're doing. The high level deception and the high level lies that we're willing to not only espouse but believe. Like, we have no skepticism whatsoever. Like, none whatsoever. We're like those aliens from Galaxy Quest. Yeah, Petrocan, you remember Nova Scotia. You remember. I remember Petrocan, right? And it was the Mulroney administration that came in and privatized all of it. Because privatization builds innovation. No. See, it's just an enormous lie that everybody just believed because they were like, well, it can't be completely bullshit. Except, yes, it totally can be. Because, again, there's like something built in the consciousness of humanity that this is how con men operate, right? Like, real, true con men understand that humans cannot understand that something is a lie if the lie is big enough. That's how they can create, like, entire personas, how they can create entire personalities. They can create an entire figure with an entire backstory, with, like, like, there are con men who literally pretend to be doctors and shit, right? And eventually they get sniffed out because someone comes around to actually check on their shit. But it's like decades of this. And it always boils down to the same thing. Well, they can't possibly be lying. Like, they're lying about being a doctor? That's a huge lie. There's no way. That's really what it comes down to. It's like, there's no way. They can't possibly be lying about a genocide in Xinjiang. That's a huge lie. No, they've got to be telling the truth about that. Get fucked. Like, get fucked. And once you realize that these institutions like the CIA, for example, like, once you understand that they exist explicitly to lie to you, you can sniff this shit out right away. Like, that's what happened to me with the Xinjiang lie, with the Uyghur genocide lie. I was just like, I heard the story, I saw the source, I immediately went, this is bullshit. Like, instantly, like that. I didn't even need to, like, go dig deep on it to know it was bullshit. I made a video saying, this seems like bullshit. And immediately I started to get pushback from people. And so I dug deeper and I found the sources, right? I found the information in the base sources. And it was literally like a raving lunatic Christian fundamentalist who has said things like, I was sent by God to destroy China, who went in to the refugee camps from the Afghanistan war, talked to 8 people, and walked out saying, yeah, there's 8 million people in concentration camps. Get completely fucked. Like, get completely fucked. No, don't think I'm going to believe that. Like, but we just shut down. Like, we just shut down as a people. We just believe everything we're told, even by sources that we mistrust. Like, when I get into these conversations with people, I say all the time, hey, how much do you trust your media? Right? How much do you trust your media? That's a question I ask people fairly regularly when I get into these conversations. Right? Hey, how much do you trust your media? Scale 1 to 10. I have never, ever had anybody go higher than 5. Everybody is 5 or less. So failing grade, right? Failing grade for everybody. No exceptions. Failing grade for everyone. And and then I look at them and I say, well, except when it comes to China, right? Then it's 100%. Complete 100% trust, right? And then that puts a little hook in them. They get a little like, and then you can start talking to them and be like, hey, where did you hear this? Where'd you hear this? Oh, is it that media that you don't trust that told you about this? Interesting. Like, why are you trusting this? Why are you believing this? And it's just something we are. It's something about being a human being that, like, we want to be on the in crowd. And so if a lie starts going around and everybody just, like, everybody believes that everybody else believes it, and so everybody believes it because they believe everybody else believes it. And nobody wants to stand up and be the guy to say, this is bullshit, because nobody wants to be on the out crowd. Except me, because fuck this place. Have you read Gwyn Dyer? China, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I haven't. That's a hilarious title, though. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Yeah, no more Mr. I just don't really trouble myself anymore with these sorts of things. I gotta be honest. Like, it's not going to be at, like, because it's you, Major. Because it's you, Major. Let's see. Gwyn Dyer, China, no more Mr. Nice Guy. This is gonna be just something ridiculous. I'm sure of it. Here we go. Published in BDN, China, no more Mr. Nice Guy. More than 200 Hong Kong police raided and shut down one of the last pro-democracy websites in Hong Kong on Wednesday, in the latest sign that the Beijing regime will no longer tolerate dissent of any kind. It was total overkill. A couple of cops with a court order would suffice, but they were sending a message to other malcontents. What's the name of the website? First and foremost, what's the name of the website? Like, if the website was literally, like, Nazis against China, I'd like to know. Chances are good it's going to be like Radio Free Asia, right? Radio Free Asia is literally a CIA op. Like, okay. So his complaint initially is like, China did something that to stop propaganda against it while we're attempting to go to war with it. Chief Secretary for Administration John Lee defended the police operation, which also arrested current and former editors and board members in their homes, in fluent Orwellian speak. Anybody who attempts to use media work as a tool to pursue their political purpose contravenes the law. They are the evil elements that damage press freedom, right? Like, we are so used to tolerating frauds and liars in our discourse. Like, think Sean Hannity, think Tucker Carlson, think Rachel Maddow, right? Just total frauds, complete liars, whose job is to be duplicitous and to lie to the populace. We're so used to accepting that as part of our society that we think when other societies don't tolerate it, that's an infringement on their freedoms, right? If you live in a press society where there are outright bad actors who are fraudulently lying, then you don't really have press freedom, honestly. Like, people should not have the freedom to spread disinformation and lies in your society. It really should be the case. And, like, yes, we know how to discern the difference. We know how to discern between someone who is arguing a point and somebody who is just outright lying. And how do we know these elements that I've described are outright lying? Because they've argued in court for the right to be able to do so. Like, we are a irredeemable society. We cannot recover from this shit. Like, we're not going to be able to vote our way out of this, right? The society has been taken over by malicious, psychopathic liars who want to lie to us. And now they attempt to present to us the idea that, hey, there's a culture over here that doesn't want their press to be taken over by malicious, psychopathic liars. They're against the freedom of the press. Maybe not. Maybe not. And again, notice, they don't actually tell you who they shut down. Like, for real, we could be talking about, like, a neo-Nazi organization that they're shutting down. We don't know, because they don't tell us. Right? It's not just Hong Kong. All of China is closing down. The limited free speech and tolerance of dissent that prevailed for 20 years under the President Xi Jinping's predecessor, Jiang Zemin, and Hu Jintao, love that name, have been systematically eroded. And now Xi is effectively president for life. That's what that is. That's just wanking bullshit. Like, you gotta be like kind of nail in the head. Fundamentally stupid to actually think this is the case. Like, the reason why Xi is likely to get another term, which is actually, like, unlikely. Like, that doesn't actually happen in the Communist Party very often, at all, in fact. Even Mao, right? But the reason why it's likely to happen is because, as far as the Chinese are concerned, they're at war with America, right? Like, you don't get to publish, like, sorry, America, you don't get to publish a document like this out in the public and like, have the Chinese be like, oh, they're just thinking it through. They're just thinking through the unthinkable, right? Yeah. No, this is a declaration of war that was published in 2016. The Chinese are very correct in saying that, oh, the Americans are serious about invading and destroying us, right? Anybody who talks to me about China without actually embracing the idea that America is launching a war against China, it's just like, you can see how detached from reality they are, right? And articles like this want you to forget that America fucking declared war on China. Like, what is this if not a declaration of war, right? The Americans aren't going to go into Congress. They're not going to go to the Senate. They're not going to go through the halls of power to actually declare war, because they never do. They never do. When they launched the Vietnam War, the Cambodian War, the war against Laos, the Afghanistan War, the Iraqi War, you know what they did? They just moved their troops in. They didn't fucking vote on it. Like, so as far as the Chinese are concerned, they're at war with America, and America is an aggressive, fascist force that is attempting to destroy them. Like, so yeah, they're going to shut down places that are walking around being like, we should let the fascists take over, for sure. Again, didn't actually tell us who got shut down. So you can't even verify. Like, did they shut down a neo-Nazi group? Did they shut down a CIA operation? Who did they shut down? We don't know. And Xi is now effectively president for life? Yeah. The Chinese are going to re-elect the president that was in power when America declared war on them. Like, he even encourages a personality cult. This is totally fraudulent. Xi Jinping recently, he was elected on a anti-corruption platform, and he recently, last year, he went through his own faction, right? There are factions, obviously, like there is in any political system, and he's gone through his own faction and actually examined even his own right-hand people because of their connection to the billionaire Jack Ma. Like, this, to claim that he encourages a personality cult while simultaneously he's going through and actually investigating his own people for corruption is delusional madness. Like, you've got to be absolutely detached from reality to believe that this is true. Something the party had managed to avoid since the catastrophe of Chairman Mao Zedong. What catastrophe? What's the catastrophe of Mao Zedong? Mao Zedong was completely successful in basically everything he did. The only thing that he was unsuccessful was that he never actually got to take the island of Taiwan. That the Americans prevented him from doing it, and he wasn't able to rally the military power in order to achieve that objective. But other than that, he was completely successful. The Great Leap Forward was a total success. Like, Oh, John the Famine. Yeah, you believe your media, eh? Okay. And there's no velvet glove on the iron hand anymore. I mean, they're at war. Of course there's no... Okay. Uppity ethnic groups like the Tibetans and the Uyghurs are just overwhelmed by imported minorities of Han Chinese who can... Those who complain get sent to concentration camps. Although we can't find those concentration camps. And the BBC even sent a film crew into those concentration camps. And you know what they found? They found a vocational school. Right? Like, literally the people running the concentration camps told them, oh yeah, people go home at the end of the night. And they were like, really, do they? And so they like set up a camera and they actually filmed it happening. That they like, people went home. And yeah, do they keep tabs on those people? Yeah, they do. You know why? Because those people are fucking Afghani refugees with connections to terrorist organizations like the East Turkmenistan Islamic movement, right? Which is a terrorist organization that has fucking like blown shit up and killed people with machetes and shit. And like, it's just brutal. It's just fucking brutal. And the idea that they're getting sent to concentration camps is a fucking joke. Like, it's a fucking total joke. Like, but oh yeah, our media though. Gotta trust our media. It's the same abroad. Wolf warrior diplomats berate the foreign countries they are stationed in for any criticism of China, and the crushing of Hong Kong's liberties signals the abandonment of any notion of seducing Taiwan into unification under the banner of one country, two systems. When the time comes, it will be annexed by force. Just like fucking... But the question is, why now? I can't imagine. You dumb fucking moron. The Americans declared war on China. Like, what the fuck do you think is going on? Xi's personality is authoritarian, to be sure. Near as I can tell, when Westerners peg China as authoritarian, notice how they don't use the word dictatorship anymore, right? They used to call it a dictatorship because they knew that people were illiterate and they didn't know any better, right? So, but now enough people have stood up and been like, China's definitely not a dictatorship. Like, it's definitely not. You can literally go, like, the National People's Congress, right? Congress. You can go to the Wikipedia site. This is how the structure of the Chinese government works. Literally show them this picture. This is the elected democratic process of China. The red is the Communist Party. The other colors are the other parties that exist in China. The gray are independents. Like, it's a dictatorship. You gotta have a nail in your head to think that's true. And so they stopped saying dictatorship, and instead they started saying this word authoritarian, which near as I can tell means having rules and enforcing them. That's what authoritarian means. It means that you live in a society where there are rules and they're enforced for everybody, right? Unlike our society, where there are rules, they're kind of enforced, and certainly if they exist they don't exist for the rich. So there's a class of people who don't have any rules apply to them, and then a class of people who have rules that apply to them, and that's called freedom, right? But if there are rules that everyone is expected to follow, that's authoritarian. That's how it's talked about. To be sure, but that is pretty standard among the princelings who grew up as part of the second and third generation communist aristocracy. That's embarrassing. That's an embarrassing statement to make. And one that literally does not understand how the Chinese system operates at all. Right? These people are elected. They're elected into this position. If any of these people, so like this little red dot over here, right? If the people who elected him don't want to see him anymore, or they think he's doing a trash job, or he becomes embarrassing to them, they elect somebody else. And that person goes away. And there's an entire ascension, right? They actually train these people, right? You're not being voted in to become the governor. You're being voted into a system that trains you to ultimately become a governor. And if you are incompetent at it, your own people will remove you from that position. Like, again, we don't have a system that's even similar in our society, and so we assume that it must be authoritarian and bad while we, declare war on it. It's who we are. So this idea that like there's a communist aristocracy is how to put it, fucking dumb. Yeah, fucking dumb. Yet for decades they supported term limits on the leadership because that protected them from being victimized by another Mao figure, right? This assumption that Mao was somehow like Mao's face is literally on the state building, right? When Xi Jinping gave his state address this New Year's, which was wonderful, I highly suggest everybody go take a look at it. Mao's face is on the front of the building. Like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Like this is embarrassing for this writer. What's the stupid idiot's name? Right? Gwyn Dyer. Like, this is he's just embarrassing himself. And also, incidentally, the person who published him. Like, this is actually really embarrassing. Like, you gotta be, like, really, like, xenophobic and racist to actually look at this and think, like, yeah, this is reasonable. Yeah, Mao he did do bad things to the people who love him and put his face everywhere. Yeah. They definitely hate Mao. That's why they put his face everywhere. Right? They're brainwashed. That's what it is. Every single citizen of China, 1.6 billion people, 1.6 billion people, all of them completely brainwashed. Yep, absolutely. That's why. And terrorized all of the time. Yeah, that's why they accept that. Like, Jesus Christ. We can't be this fucking racist, can we? Like, at this point, it's not even xenophobia. It's just outright racism. Like, if they now accept Xi's elevation to supreme and perpetual power, it cannot just be because they are afraid of him. He is only one man. There also has to be some sense among the others in party leadership that it will need a tough autocrat to ride out the coming storms to preserve its rules. Oh, okay. So what might those storms be? Let's see what these guys think the storms that are coming might be. Because this is actually accurate, right? They are re-electing Xi because they see that there is going to be some turmoil and they want continuity, right? We elect presidents under the same logic, right? It's very rare that a president gets deposed amidst a war, which is why presidents will start wars on purpose, so that they can go into an election year while at war, right? This is actually a political strategy that they actually do. You can take a look at it, right? Most presidents start a war before they go into an election so that they can maintain their power over that course. That's how it works. So, but let's take a look at what they think. It has been evident for years that Beijing was cooking the books and overstating China's economic growth rate. Source? We're not going to source that. Okay. It was obvious from previous examples where industrializing countries enjoyed high growth rates by exploiting cheap labor flooding into cities from the countryside that this was a once-only bonus. The 10% growth never lasts more than one generation and falls back to the normal 2.3%. Examples are Japan and South Korea. Like it or not, China has had its 30 years of high-speed growth, 85 to 2015. Oh, that couldn't have been because of Mao's Great Leap Forward. Okay, whatever. And behind the facade of lies, its real growth rate has already been falling for at least half a decade, source required. In the last few quarters, indeed, China's gross domestic product, which, again, if you're reading anything and they're citing gross domestic product, like, the guy that invented gross domestic product said, do not use this as a measure for your overall economic quality, right? Like, and yeah, you're absolutely on it, I am, right? China, as I look around in my lifetime, appears clearly the Chinese government has improved the standard of living for its citizens the most. Yeah. Like, because it's responsive to the needs of the people. Yeah, they don't need to do a thorough research because they know the people who read this shit will be xenophobic enough not to ask too many questions. Exactly, right? It has to be true because the lie is so big, right? It's got to be the truth. The Chinese birth rate has collapsed. Each new age cohort entering the workforce much smaller. Debt. Like, And all of this economic conversation, because this guy's an economic illiterate, for sure, right? He still thinks neoliberal capitalism is good, or working, or effective, or something other than the cult that it actually is. Like, China understands that its economy is its people, right? That's something that is not well understood by the West. That your people are your economy. That those two things are inexorably linked. It's the reason why America is facing, it's the number one reason why America is facing a major decline. Because it doesn't understand that your people are your economy. That if you take a huge section of your populace and abandon them into the streets, right? You're dealing a major blow to your economy. A major blow to your economy. Those are people that are not productive. They're not part of your overall system. They're not putting anything in. They can't, right? They're just trying to subsist on the scraps that fall out of the economy that you have built, right? Because you've extracted them. You've left them out on the street. And then and then while you're doing that, the justification for that is like, oh, but we've created extreme wealth over here. But that extreme wealth isn't helping your economy either, because it doesn't do anything. It just sits in the corner, right? So not only are you extracting your citizens over here, you're also extracting citizens over here. And then the only people who are actually doing any work over here, right, your middle class, so to speak, well, more and more and more, the work that they're doing doesn't achieve anything and isn't of any value to anyone, right? Like the financial sector, it's completely worthless. It doesn't do anything of value, right? Creates nothing. You end up with nothing, right? So this is just the long form way of me saying, like, so what if the birth rate collapses? Like, who gives a fuck? The quality of life that your citizens have and the ability for them to connect to their economy and to their systems and to their communities is what matters. That's what matters, right? And what actually is being produced and manufactured and created. That's what matters, right? So measuring that by something like GDP or by birth rate, right? Even if these things are true, which, again, source required, but anyway, two implications of this: long-term threats to communist rule in China. I mean, long-term threats to Chinese rule. That's comedic. The party's promise to overtake the U.S. economy and make China the world's dominant power will probably never come to pass. Already has. Nor will its promise to raise Chinese living standards to a world-developed level. They're well on the way. Like, they're well on the way. This is very embarrassing. If the Communist Party can't deliver on those two promises, which they basically have, I mean, again, what gives them the right to monopolize political power in China? They do not monopolize power in China. Like, black and white. It's like this is what makes this article embarrassing, right? Is that his claims are extremely easy to falsify. Like, extremely easy to falsify. It's certainly not delivering on its old promise of equality either, source required. No wonder Xi Jinping is battening down the hatches politically. What are you talking about? Like, by any measure, Xi Jinping is one of the most successful world leaders in maybe the history of the world. Like, what measure do you need? Pick a measurement. What's the measurement you care about? Xi Jinping is like in the top echelon of that measurement, as almost a guarantee. Like, he was the leader as and don't get me wrong, like, Xi Jinping exists as a leader because of the hard work done by his predecessors. This is the major difference between the Chinese system and the American system, is that the American system antagonizes Democrats, Republicans, right, conservatives, liberals, and they antagonize with one another. And the idea is always like, we compete, and then the good ideas are the ones that pop out, right? But what actually happens is that, let's say this guy has a good idea and they start enacting it and they start doing it. Well, then this guy comes in and smashes it all apart, like Doug Ford did, right? When Doug Ford came into power, we had 700 climate change initiatives on the go, ready to go, kicking off, moving, right? Now we have 0. Guy came in and just smashed it all apart. It's done. It's gone. And you can see that manifesting clearly in the transit system, right? In just any kind of infrastructure project at all. Like, we are dumb. And it's because of this. It's because of this. Whereas in China, a shift in leadership is like a handing of the baton, right? One leader exits, another leader takes his place. And as the leader exits, he hands over the baton and the other guy takes it and says, great. And because they all are looking at the same economic plan, that this system spits out a 100-year plan that they redress every 5 years, right? And so it's extremely unlikely that the leader is going to take that baton and then throw it on the ground, right? And get rid of the plan. Right? And so they're able to actually enact like long form plans and do things that are very serious. Like very serious. Like shit that we would look at here in North America and just be like, how? In 2008, there was no high-speed rail in China. Now there's high-speed rail connecting all of their cities. 12 years it took them. Do you think we could even start to do that? No. We are not a serious culture. China is. Which is why we've got to... And like articles like this, unserious bullshit like this, only makes us look more childish. Like, this is the reason why we suck so bad. Because we refuse to actually acknowledge reality. We refuse to actually look at a culture that is one-upping us seriously. And we refuse to learn anything or do anything serious. Oh, I love this. And no wonder the nomenclature, to use the old Soviet word, are going along with it. Stagnation awaits. Just fucking embarrassing. Like, what are you talking about? Like... There is a thing called the Belt and Road Initiative. If you're one of the first timers in this chat, if you don't know about this, you need to. If you want to know anything about geopolitics and what's going on in the world, you have to know about the Belt and Road Initiative. In the last 20 years, China has been building high-speed rail across the entire planet. The red lines here indicate line that's already been built, right? They built a hospital to treat COVID-19 patients in 10 days. Yep, China's got a 92% approval rating, least notable capital attack 30 years ago, hasn't been in war in 40 years, political and economic stability, 2 COVID deaths in 2021. Yeah. Like, America, 38% approval rating, attack at capital, losing war after war, political and economic instability, worst COVID response. China is going to collapse. Oddly enough, the robots are taking over the financial sector also. Yeah, which, I mean, just makes it worse, right? Because robots can do stupid shit that nobody can predict. And so they destabilize the market is their problem. Yeah, we have no real long-term goals. We have huge, dangerous welfare system that erratically attacks other nations and wastes most of our wealth, and we act all badass because we've got the biggest guns. But even that's getting worthless, right? Even that's becoming worthless. Because we can't take on other superpowers. If you've got a nuclear bomb, we're not going to invade you. Like we can do proxy wars and we can do kind of shitty underhanded stuff, but we're not going to actually invade you because we're not like we're psychopathic, but we're not insane. Like we're not just like Looney Tunes, like and then we'll bomb them, which is what you would have to be, right? So the Belt and Road Initiative. This guarantees that China will not stagnate, right? China is the manufacturing sector for the world. Like, you send your raw materials to China, they build shit, and then distribute it into the world. And how are they doing that? Through the Belt and Road Initiative. And as this moves forward more and more, it's going to become more robust. It is their primary tool for spreading peace in the world, because trade is peace. If you are openly trading with another community or another culture, you, by definition, cannot be at war with them. Trade is peace. And what is China doing? China is building high-speed rail. They've already built it into Europe. It's already there, right? You can see. Goes through Moscow into Minsk. If you wonder why we're all supposed to be caring about Belarus, this is why, right? If you're wondering why there's a big war going on in Ukraine, this is why, right? It's because the Americans want to disrupt this line. Because their number one fear is that Europe is going to turn to China. And why would Europe turn to China? Oh, could be because America is being taken over by fascists and is unstable, while China looks pretty fucking stable. So this idea that China is going to like collapse or stagnate, and like, what does that even mean, incidentally? What does stagnation even mean? Like, if everybody lives in a nice house, or at least has like a reasonable living space, and is fed, and has access to education, and is living a reasonable life, right? Is that stagnation? Like, what does that even mean exactly? What does stagnation mean? Like, because under the concept of neoliberalism, we need to be constantly at growth, right? We need to constantly be growing. The ideology of the cancer cell, right? Just endless growth for growth's sake. And if you can't just endlessly grow forever, then you're stagnated, I guess. Well, what does that even mean? What does it mean to be stagnated? I gotta be honest, I'd rather be stagnated than this shit. I'd rather be living in a nation that was stagnated than living in a nation that was like shipping bombs overseas to drop on kids. Right? Seems to me like stagnation is okay in comparison to that shit. Yeah, we are insane. We could build high-speed rail if it made less bullets that ideally should never be used. Yeah. No, that's the thing. Like, the Americans operate, and North America, like, when I say Americans, I mean America and Canada, because Canada has essentially subserviated itself to America. Like, we have completely squandered any benefit that we have had from World War II. We could very easily have interacted with the world in a peaceful manner, helped build people up, taken a look at what other cultures were doing and how they were structuring themselves, and said like, oh, that's interesting, and learned from them and tried to shift things around. But we didn't do any of that because, 10 rich cocksuckers didn't want to. Like, that's seriously what it is. Like, straight up. And we are becoming the asshole of the world. Like, we are becoming just a backwards people who are gonna have this like huge military that we can't do anything with. Because as this Belt and Road Initiative connects to places, there's going to be less and less places that America can actually fuck with. Because China will say, hey, if you fuck with this, you are fucking with us. Right? How do we know that's true, by the way? Because of Iran. How did Iran not get invaded that entire 20-year period? There was a 20-year period where the Americans invaded Afghanistan, invaded Iraq, and destroyed them. Right? The CIA was literally murdering children in the streets in Afghanistan. Like, how did Iran avoid that fate? And it is because China had built the Belt and Road Initiative into Tehran and had created a military alliance with Iran. So that it was well understood that if the Americans invaded Iran, they would be faced with Chinese presence there. And so they couldn't. Straight up, they couldn't. And now that the Americans have withdrawn from Afghanistan, the Chinese are already building the rail. They're already building the rail in. In 5 years, that rail is going to be complete, and then in another 5 years, Afghanistan is going to be a different place. because Afghanistan has resources that they can sell to the Chinese through the Belt and Road Initiative. And that's going to happen whether or not you think the Taliban are an insane group of psychopaths or not. Like, if they're self-interested and all they want is money for themselves, then they connect to the Belt and Road Initiative and off they go. If they're altruistic and want to help their people, then they'll get connected to the Belt and Road Initiative, and there you go. It happens in either case. And as this project continues, like once the Americans leave Baghdad, right? Leave Iraq, because they have to. It's an inevitability, right? They've completely failed here. And the same story is going to happen. They're going to leave Iraq, and then something like the Taliban will take over, right? Immediately. And then what's going to happen? They're going to build a rail from Tehran to Baghdad. Just like that. Easy. Like, I wouldn't be too surprised to find out that they've already got the stuff ready to go. That they're like literally sitting there with this stuff to build it. And just being like, yep, just waiting for the Americans to leave. And then from there, there's crazy shit that's going to happen. The Saudis are actually building a new city called Neom right here so that they'll connect from Baghdad into there, build a tunnel underneath here, connect into the Suez Canal, and then you're in Africa, where they're already building rail, you can see. So, like, China is stagnating? Shut the fuck up. That's embarrassing. That's fucking embarrassing, dude. Like, what a fucking garbage outlet to actually publish this. What is this? Why are you even looking at this, Major? Like, what the fuck is this? Is this Bang or Daily News? Bang or Daily News? Yikes. Yikes. This feels like somebody put this on your Facebook feed, dude. Well, clip that rant. I fucking talked about that for like a half hour. Too fucking long. It just pisses me off, you know? You know what pisses me off about it the most? We could be looking at China and being and go like, oh wow, look at what they're doing. Oh wow, you guys see this? Whoa, they're doing shit we didn't even think was possible. Holy cow, look at them. We could do that, couldn't we do that? We could do that. Why don't we just do that? Let's just do that. And then we could. Right? And then we could. And wouldn't it be nice if we were actually talking to China as if it was like a neighbor? You know? Like, even if it was a neighbor you didn't like that much. You know, wouldn't it be nice if we were actually like talking about China as if it was like, oh, it's the Chinese. I don't really get the way they live or what they're doing, but you know, they're over there doing what they think they need to do. And, you know, God bless them. I hope that good things happen for China as they're over there facing all of the struggles that everybody faces, you know? While we're over here, we're facing those same struggles. And I hope when we talk to them that everything goes well for them. Right? I wish that's how we were talking about China. Why can't we talk about China that way? Why can't we talk about Russia? Why can't we talk about India? Why can't we talk about these places like that? Why is it constantly this just like backbiting, sniveling, like grotesque, like spreading around this bullshit, gossip, lying crap? Why are we constantly trying to tear these people down instead of hoping for the best for them? Instead of saying like, well, they seem to have a struggle going on. Like take what happened in Myanmar recently, the coup, right? Oh, there's a coup in Myanmar. Oh, that's tough. That's tough, isn't it? You know, it's I hope that kind of thing doesn't happen here, and I'm thankful it doesn't. But while they go through that, my heart is with them. I hope they get that figured out. Yeah, I hope they get that figured out. No, we can't talk that way. If you start talking that way, people look at you weird. Like, oh, how dare we hope we live in peace? How dare we hope that like the world is peaceful? How dare we say like, oh, China, I hope the Chinese people are doing well. We should trade. What do you think? We should trade with them. Yeah, we should trade with them. Like, we constantly need to have this pissing match. We constantly need to have like a dick measuring contest where we're constantly saying, And it really does boil down to this idea, and it's just an idea, it's not real, that we have in our heads that there is a hierarchy where at the very top one state is the top of. It's just like white supremacy writ large, right? That if you're a supremacist, you have to believe that there is a supreme, right? Well, I'm not a supremacist. I think by and large we're just groups of humans trying to make the best of it. And some of us are doing a more interesting job of it, frankly. It was in my local newspaper. He's a Newfoundlander. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Major. That was an embarrassing article. Like, that was an embarrassing article. Like, and it hurts my brain that there are people not only walking around thinking that way, but getting published. Like, that's the thing that hurts me the most. That there's actually people willing to publish that kind of dreck. Bangor, Maine, the setting of Stephen King novels. Claim to fame is an airport. Yeah, fantastic. All right. Some good news. I gotta get through this stuff, guys. Look how many links I've gotten. I haven't even scraped on it. You guys got me talking today. That's what it is. I'm excited because there's so many new people in the chat. I gotta be straight with you, man. I am excited by that. So many new people in the chat. How exciting! Is this working? Is this actually working? Oh my god. Okay. Winnie the Pooh is now in the public domain. Specifically the original works. So not the Disney stuff. But the original works by Milnes is now in the public domain. So if you wanted to write a story about Winnie the Pooh, right? If you want to use Winnie the Pooh as a character in something that you do, you go ahead. You're absolutely permitted to do so. Isn't that nice? I am actually of the opinion that we should always be able to do this. I think the idea of copyright is fucking dumb. And it gets dumber the more you think about it. Right? Like, well, if you don't have copyright, then someone can take your character and use it in their own stuff right away. And it's like, well, they can try. And like, wouldn't you want them to? That's what I would think. Like, if I told a story that was so successful that other people wanted to use my character, I'd be happy about that, wouldn't you? Like, I've already made like millions of dollars by that point for sure. Like, I've already told a story that's so successful that other people want to use the character, right? And they can try, right? But there's no guarantee that they'll be successful at it. And unless they actually do justice to my original character, right? In my view, the reason copyright exists is so that we can't critique structures of power, right? That we actually can't tell stories with these characters in a timely and efficient manner, because that would mean that we would be able to critique them or change something about them fundamentally. Like, like, for example, right? I wrote, I don't know why I get kind of embarrassed by this, because I'm actually quite pleased with this. I wrote a script about the Aladdin character Jafar, the villain of the story Jafar. And I wrote a script that is his redemption arc. That I genuinely do think that if somebody produced it, would be brilliant. Right? So you would be fine with me stealing your songs, turning them into something you don't like somehow? You can try. I mean, you can try. Like, I just don't like. The people who say that kind of thing completely disrespect how much energy it actually takes to do that. Like, if I am writing and producing and making something and getting it out into the world and doing that effort and taking that time and pushing it forward and doing all of that, like, that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. Like, a lot of time and a lot of effort. And, like, the idea that someone else is just going to come along and, like, goop it up and then start doing it better. I just am like, probably not. Like, honestly, you know? And it does get into like territory when you start talking about like, well, if you have an organization like Disney that exists, right? And Disney just starts stealing people's stuff or starts using people's stuff. It's like, oh yeah, okay, well, Disney's a piece of shit. But again, like if wealth was capped at like $1 million, right? Chances are good you would have already made your money, right? If it gets to the point where someone like Disney wants to use it in the first place, right? But the problem is that we have like billionaires. Again, dead center of the Venn diagram, right? Anyway. Yeah, incoming Zinni the Pooh memes, yeah. That is so fucking unbelievably racist. Like, it's just like brutal to me that people are using... And you know what's funny about that? Because like when I first encountered the Zinni the Pooh memes, for those who don't know, people take Xi Jinping's face and they put him on Winnie the Pooh's face. Like, straightforward, right? I was very confused by it at first, right? Because I didn't quite realize what I was even looking at. I was like, what is this? And why do people care? And like, it doesn't make sense to me. And then literally it like dawned on me, and I had a couple of conversations with people. It is straight up because Winnie the Pooh is yellow. That's it. Somebody said like Zinni the Pooh one time. He's yellow. It's stuck. And it's just like, that is like the lowest level of racism that can exist. Right? Like, yikes. As Willie Nelson said, let's all get together and steal each other's songs. Yeah. Like it's like the only thing that makes it sticky is that when you introduce a big institution into it with that has billions of dollars at their disposal. That really is the only reason it gets sticky. Because like and there's also like just a reputational thing. Like for example, like comedians have stolen each other's bits, right? But like comedians know when you do that. There's like a famous encounter between Joe Rogan and Carl Mencia, where Joe Rogan calls him out in public for doing it. Because he did, for sure. Like, he uses other people's bits and he doesn't credit them. And, like, there's also, like, a well-established idea that, like, you should credit people, right, when you use their stuff. So, for example, if you write a university paper, you have to cite people, right? Or else it's considered plagiarism, right? So, like, if somebody used my stuff and then credited me, I'd be basically like, oh, okay. Like, that drives people to me. So, like, that to me is like a fine compromise. But, like, this idea that, like, no, you can't use Winnie the Pooh. No. It's just like, seems a bit much, honestly. Just seems a bit much. I'm like, come on. P.S. I love Winnie the Pooh. I absolutely love Winnie the Pooh. The 1969 The Adventures of Winnie the Pooh that Disney produced, back when Disney was actually good at producing shit, is just brilliant. Just brilliant. Like, they've never been able to accurately capture that character as well as they did in that rendition of it. It was so obviously a labor of love. Like, it was so obvious. Just like everyone involved in that project was like, we got to find exactly the right voice actors, and we got to like and the character just needs to be there and brilliant. And I have this one image in my head all the time, that Winnie the Pooh is trying to get honey out of a honey tree the way that he does, right? And something happens where he gets blown up into the air, right? And he gets blown up into the air and it's like, and he pauses right at the top of it and just goes, oh, bother. And then starts falling. And every time I see it, I just am like, that is perfect. And then he falls to the earth, and because he's a stuffed bear, it's just like poop, 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 and there's no problem, right? So it's like completely fine. And A.A. Milnes is responsible for one of the most brilliant pieces of writing I have ever seen, which is they say nothing's impossible, but I do nothing every day. That is a work of art. That is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. All right. So a little bit of good news. Winnie the Pooh now in the public. And there's also others. Poetry collections by the Weary Blues. Enough Rope by Dorothy Parker. Some of the silent films of Buster Keaton. Battling Butler. The Tempest starring Greta Garbo. The Son of Sheik. And For Heaven's Sake also became public property, which is exciting, actually. The Buster Keaton stuff is brilliant. If you really want to see some really genius stuff, Buster Keaton is high level, really, really high level stuff. The sight gag where someone's standing and then like something falls and they fall in it, like a house falls and they go through the window, right? Buster Keaton invented that, or at the very least popularized it and was the first to film it. When he did it the first time, the engineer who was on site while they did it was terrified. He was just like, okay, yeah, this should work. Just walk on. And Buster Keaton like walks on to his spot. It's not like they get him on spot and then drop it. They like walk, and it wasn't like styrofoam or shit. Like Buster Keaton was hardcore. Like he used real shit and did real stuff. Like, it is a miracle that he didn't kill himself. There's actually a famous story where Buster Keaton, he was jumping down a series of like large steps. So like it was about a story each jump, and he would go and he would jump down and then jump down and then jump down. And on one of the jump downs, he slipped. Like you could see it. Like he visibly slipped and fell right here, just like wham, and he just popped right back up and carried on. Because Buster Keaton was a big believer that like we do things once, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, we move on. Right? He didn't do things multiple times. He really believed in this idea that like if we can't get it right the first time, then I don't even want to do it. Like that's how that. So that created like a high level of expectation in his work, and so when he fell and he like lands on his neck, right? And he like pops up and carries on. He's a young man, right? And so he carries on with his life. And then steadily over time, he starts to like, this shoulder starts to really bother him. And like his neck's getting not so spicy, not so hot, which is no good because he wants to keep doing stuff. So he goes and he sees a doctor, and the doctor like gives him once over. They do x-rays, which at that time was like a new technology. And they check him out and they're like, yeah, we're pretty sure you broke your neck at some point. Can you think of a time? This is 5 years later. And he goes, yeah, probably when I fell right on my fucking neck. On film. In front of everybody. And then just popped up and kind of went along with my life. They're like, yeah, we're pretty sure that broke your fucking neck, dude. We're pretty sure about that. Yeah, Buster Keaton. And what was brilliant about Buster Keaton, like Charlie Chaplin had a lot of personal controversy. Buster Keaton didn't have any of that shit. As far as anyone was concerned, Buster Keaton was not a person off screen. He literally just lived the quietest life. Just basically, when he wasn't filming, he was just like chilling out. Right? God bless you, Buster Keaton. Anyway. Chevron paying $3 billion to jail lawyer instead of compensating indigenous tribes. I'm going to grab some water.
A conscious decision to dump billions of gallons of cancer. Chevron went into the Amazon of Ecuador and made a conscious decision to dump billions of gallons of cancer-causing oil waste onto indigenous ancestral lands. Thousands of people have died. That was a money-saving, I should say, decision. It was based out of pure greed. We came in as lawyers and tried to realign that awful situation and force Chevron to pay the people it poisoned. We won the case, and rather than pay the judgment, they've literally spent $3 billion to pay 60 law firms and 2,000 lawyers to attack me and other lawyers. This is not new, but what's never been seen before is this idea of a corporate prosecution, that is a Chevron-driven private prosecutor who managed to lock me up for 800 days. I never got a jury. I'm charged with a crime that was rejected by the regular prosecutor. The longest sentence ever given a lawyer who's been convicted of what I'm charged with is 90 days of home confinement. And I've now served literally 800 days of home confinement, more than 8 times that amount. And on top of that, the judge, who has financial ties to Chevron, Loretta Preska, just sentenced me to 6 months in prison on top of my 800 days of house arrest. This is a playbook. This isn't happenstance. It's not the mistake of a judge. It's not an overreach by a corporation. It is actually a playbook that has been used in other countries against other activists, and will be used again in this country against lawyers and activists who are a little too successful in holding the fossil fuel industry accountable. To some degree, it's already being used against protesters at Standing Rock, at Line 3, and so many other places around the country, primarily Native Americans, many of whom, like Jessica Resniak, are locked up for years for engaging in civil disobedience at pipeline sites. Chevron and the fossil fuel industry have a lot of power, and what the people of Ecuador have done with the help of their lawyers like me is very threatening.
So as always, right, I make it a point. I'm glad that he mentions Jessica Resniak, because I've reported on Jessica Resniak's fight against the fossil fuel industry. She's serving an 8-year sentence for attempting to destroy a pipeline, which she absolutely should have done. We should be destroying pipelines, for sure. Like when David Suzuki said that we will be blowing up pipelines in the future, he should have absolutely doubled down on that. The fact that he apologized for it and stepped down for it, no, fuck you, David Suzuki. Like, double down on that shit. Be like, yeah, go fuck yourself. Like, do something about this. Because my position is very simple. Robin Hood is a hero because he was attempting to help the poor that were being destroyed by the people who were supposed to govern them. Jessica Resniak and this fellow here are heroes because they are attempting to prevent a climate change apocalypse by fighting against the people who are supposed to be governing us. Right? And a story like this only confirms my larger thesis, which is that we have been abandoned, that our governments have gone insane, they've lost the ability to have rational thoughts, right? They've lost the ability to have empathy or compassion. And it's even worse than that, right? Not only have they lost the ability to have compassion and empathy, they wouldn't even know how to do it if they wanted to. That's how bad it's gotten. Like, even if they tried, they wouldn't know where to start. And a story like this is actually quite terrifying. What's this guy's crime? This guy's crime was holding fossil fuel industry accountable for literally slavery. Like, and he's serving a prison sentence for it because of a crooked judge. Which, I mean, there is no such thing as a not crooked judge in the American system. Like, did you know that to become a judge in America, you literally just need to win an election? Like, I have a buddy who's a lawyer, right? And he's told me, do you know what you have to do to become a judge in Canada? To become a judge in Canada, you need to be a trained lawyer. So you need to have like years of experience as a lawyer, right? You've got to work as a lawyer for 10, 15 years. You've got to teach in a university or a school as a lawyer. Then you need to actually apply to become a judge. They ask you to write a thesis paper, like a PhD level thesis paper, on what reform they would like to see, what they think would improve the legal system, that the judges who read this then need to agree with, or not agree, but at least acknowledge that it's a reasonable thing. And that's how you become a lower appellate judge. And then from that level, as a lower appellate judge, you work as that, And then you can ascend the ranks of judges until finally you get to a level where you can get on the short list as how to be the short list of being a Supreme Court judge. And that's the list that the Prime Minister of Canada chooses from. So, like, this idea that, like, I'm the president and I will pick my friend Beverly, who has no legal training and nobody, who is this person, right? Like, that's idiotic, right? And in the American legal system, you're literally, like, electing, like, a rube. You're electing, like, Joe Schmo Kokomo. Like, I was raised by a Presbyterian pastor. Vote Bill. Like, no. Like, no. So the American system, the American legal system, such as it exists, is infinitely corruptible. It's designed to be corruptible. Like, how easy would it be to just get a judge in that you wanted to have in? Like, you're a billionaire. How much money do you think it would take? Probably not a lot. Like, probably not a lot. Yeah, conservatives want to change that process. What? Yeah, anybody with a rational brain in their head would want to change this. Like, the idea that it's like judges are elected? What the fuck? Like, no. Like, fucking no. Like, no, they're not. Like, that's embarrassing. Like, yikes. And I've never met anybody who's actually attempted to defend that, but boy howdy, I'm sure they exist. Like, and I'm sure their defense sounds real childish. I'm sure it really is just like, yeah, the people will always vote in a person who's like, you don't even need to have a law degree. Like, literally, you don't need to know anything about the law to become a judge in America. Like, yikes. Yikes. Yippity yikes.
Stay out 5 days. And now we're only able to stay out 5 days. No more 14. 5 days. And they're saying on the news 5 days because there's too many people staying out of work and there's not enough people to cover.
We have just passed the starting point of a new labor revolution in the United States. It started to really ramp up during the Great Resignation period through 2021 and now going into 2022. All across this country and in multiple industries, we have worker strike, whether it be wildcat worker strikes or union-based. 68% of the country supports workers' unions, and the support has never been higher since 1965. And that support is trickling out to labor unions being formed in large companies like Starbucks, and that is just going to expand across the country. And in my opinion, with the CDC coming out and lowering guidelines and restrictions of COVID-19 and supporting big business over the health and safety of the citizens of this country, that is going to be the second ignition of the labor revolution. As more people get sick and stay home from work, it's going to incentivize those who are not sick to stay home so that they don't get sick. If corporations and the government really wanted to see where our breaking point is, I think we're there. When you have major airline companies writing the guidelines for the CDC, which, by the way, is just not surprising to me, because their stock price is going down. And that's the important part of the economy, their stock price and their bonuses. And you have the CDC changing their guidelines, putting people at risk specifically to save these giant corporations. That is a line that we are not going to cross again, especially at the cost of our own health. People are starting to realize the true power that they hold. If you take a look at this map, you can see that the largest employer in the country is Walmart. The second they realized that unionizing and a general strike of Walmart could topple the economy, the exact moment that we get real labor reforms in this country. And because they continue to prove that the only numbers they care about are not the deaths from this pandemic, are not the debilitating diseases that come after you survive it, but it's the stock price and the executive bonuses that are divvied out. Those are the numbers that they care about. They are forcing us into a position where a general strike is a must.
Yep. Like, that's the thing about all of this, right? Is I feel like the populace's hand is being forced. Like, people don't want to do any of this. We don't. but like we're out of options. Like for real, like we're just out of options. Like it's either rebel, it's either revolt or die. Like that's your choice. That's your freedom. And Frog, yeah, conservatives want to change the Canadian process. Yeah, that's the reason why they're unelectable, right? That's the reason why they can't get power. Well, not specifically this, but just like they're so obviously fraudulent. Like just as a like that's my big complaint about the conservatives is like they're just really bad at lying, you know? Like the reason why liberals seize power and maintain power so effectively is because they're so effective at lying. They're much more effective liars. And like Doug Ford really showed the conservatives and showed people like, if you want to get elected as a conservative, you've got to lie. And you got to lie big, right? It goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Big lies, big, aggressive lies that are so big that they can't possibly be lies. Doug Ford was really, really good at that. He told extremely big lies that everybody believed, and it got him elected as the premier, right? And it was especially impressive because he wasn't like an insider. He didn't have a seat at the time, like that sort of thing, right? His own party didn't want him to be the leader of the Conservative Party. And he just, took power as a populist. And he did it by just telling large-scale aggressive lies. And he's really showing the conservatives that they need to lie. If they want power, they've got to stop telling the truth about their positions. They got to start telling big lies. And you can see it. It's starting to happen in the Conservative Party. They're starting to tell like large-scale lies. And completely misrepresenting who they are. But they keep trying to tell the truth but make it nice, right? That's the problem with the federal conservatives, is that they keep trying to say yeah, deficit's got to be under control, and if you support business, the business will support people, that kind of fucking nonsense, right? They're trying to make it sound nice, but it's still fundamentally rooted in the truth of their position. Right? They just need to start lying their asses off because Canadians are so gullible and so incapable of discerning reality from fact from fiction, that they'll just act like Trump. You might as well, right? It seems to work. I'm not saying that because I want the conservatives to take power. I'm just saying if you actually want power in Canada, step one, lie your ass off. It works for the Liberals. It completely works for the Liberals. I don't see why the Conservatives don't. It completely worked for Ford. It completely works for Scott Moe, all of these Conservatives that get in as premiers. Kenny didn't necessarily need to lie his way in because of the dynamics of how Albertan politics work. But I just don't understand why these conservatives keep trying to tell the truth about their positions. Lie. Tell big aggressive lies. The elites broke the social contract, act like Trump. No, what's important is that the elites didn't break the social contract, right? That capitalism does that. The central antagonizing aspect of the society, right? The thing that puts us at odds with one another. It's always going to result in this. Always. Yeah, everyone thinks politicians lie anyway. Lean into it. Yeah. And there's no punishment. That's the big thing that's important to remember. It's there's zero punishment. You will not be punished. The populace genuinely believes that your punishment is us voting you out. What the fuck is wrong with your brain? Getting voted out is part of the procedure, right? That you are being financially supported by a death cult in order to deceive the populace into getting power so that you can betray them completely. And then as a reward for doing so, once you are kicked out of office, once you leave office, which is an inevitability for every politician, the death cult will give you a cushy job. Like, there's zero punishment for doing this. I actually do get to a point where I'm like, I don't actually get why the conservatives feel the need to tell the truth to the populace. And it is just like, maybe they actually do genuinely believe what they say. Maybe they are just that illiterate and stupid that they think that what they're saying is actually good somehow. NDP needs big aggressive laws. No, the NDP need to actually just, like, I think the NDP could just, well, I mean, the problem is that, like, the truth, like, we're so mired in bullshit in this society that if you start telling the truth, people refuse to believe it. Like, that's the fucked up thing about Canadians. Like, you tell the truth and people refuse to believe it. Like, it's like this there's this Mark Twain quote that I really like, which is, it's easier to trick a man than convince a man he's been tricked. Like, and that seems to be the heart of it. That people are easy to trick, but tough to convince they've been tricked. So you would think at this point, people would have even an iota of skepticism. March 10th is the day. It's the International Day of Awesomeness. That day, we encourage everyone in the U.S. Call in sick. By federal and state laws, employers cannot force you to come in while sick, nor can they demand proof if you are missing just the one day. This is our day, where we say we are awesome and deserve our mental health. I like sharing this kind of stuff around. Don't know if it manifests into anything. I'd really like everybody to know about it. Maybe March 10th will be a fun day. That's my dad's birthday. Happy birthday, Dad. In regards to the other conversation, I wanted to show this. You can find this just by Googling it, like Harvard poll Chinese people. Harvard did a poll on the Chinese people through time and found out that they rather liked their government. Just a fun little fact. Yeah. I fear that you may be correct here, Frog. They get off on it. Conservatives get off on getting one over on the populace. Well, especially because conservatives they have like this victimization, like they think they're victims somehow. Like they're like the primary beneficiaries of the society, and yet they play and pretend like they're victims. Like it's very weird. What do you think of leftists in the second and third world who support Trump's re-election because he'll destroy the imperialist core sooner than the Democrats will, and he'll kill fewer people? That's there's a term for that called accelerationist. I understand why people take this position. Like, I get it. But I think that they misunderstand the level of destruction that is going to be faced. Like, there were accelerationists when the Nazis were rising to power as well. And just like them, just like the people who are supporting Trump's upswing, the people who supported the upswing of Nazism and Hitler misunderstood the level of depravity and destruction that Hitler was willing to inflict on the people. And I feel very similarly, like, Trump's not Hitler, okay? Like, in my view, Trump and Biden are basically equals to one another. Like, they're, like, what really is the difference between Biden and Trump? I don't see it. Like, Biden is quieter. Like, he doesn't take to Twitter, right? Like, he's less of a character, I suppose. He's boring in his presentation and who he is. But in terms of his policies, they're identical. Like, they're not different. Like, and there's actually a pretty good argument to be made that Biden is far more bloodthirsty than Trump. Like, Trump definitely bombed some shit, and he definitely fucked some stuff up. But like, Biden has already bombed Syria, Somalia, right? Like, oh, Johnny pulled out of Afghanistan. Yeah, using Trump's plan. Like, it seems like there's no real difference between these two. And so it really is just kind of optics, right? Like, he'll destroy the imperialist core sooner than the Democrats will. And it's like, will he? Like, Trump's probably not going to destroy the imperialist core. Like, if anything, a Trump re-election will just make the imperialism more opaque, like make it more obvious. Which I guess is a form of destruction, but like people act like Trump did a lot of damage to something, and it's like, not really. Like, he did a lot of reputational damage, and he really like showed the world. Like, I take Jon Stewart's position on this. Jon Stewart said this in the early days of Trump, where like he was like, "This is nothing new. Like, this is America, baby. Like, this is how it is. This is who we are. We've always been this way." And I very much think that of Trump. Like, he's not an aberration. Like, he's not even that strange in terms of like a political figure. He's a character. He's a weird oddball, like as a person, but like as a policymaker, as a politician, it's pretty much in line, right? And the reality is like, should Trump be reelected, the power structure will be very comfortable with him, right? Like, they're very comfortable with somebody like Trump. Like, sure, he's a character. He's a bit outlandish. He's a bit weird. We got to take him off Twitter, you know? But like, whatever. I'll make the line goes up. I make my billions of dollars. Who gives a fuck? And that's really all it is. So I think that these leftists are like, they're first of all, I think they might be misunderstanding like who Trump is. The reputational damage is what's serious. Like, and if they're talking about like Trump is not going to destroy the imperial core, but he might isolate it, right? Like, will the EU really like double down with a Trump presidency? Like, doubtful that the Europeans might start leaning closer to China if that starts to happen, right? And there is a significant amount of reputational damage that will occur with a Trump re-election, because like, the number one thing that people came out of the Trump years with was that he was erratic, right? You didn't know what he was going to do next. And that erraticness was like, people tried to pretend that erraticness was new. And he as a figure and as a character helped kind of pump that idea of erraticness. But the Republican Party has always been that way. Like, George Bush literally launched a fucking war. Like, how much more erratic can you get? Like, the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan was fucking erratic, dude. Like, that was done against international support, with George W. Bush literally saying to the UN that they're an irrelevant institution that the United States doesn't answer to. Like, that's fucking erratic. Like, people talk about Donald Trump as if he's an aberration within the Republican Party, and I'm literally just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, George W. Bush started a war that is still happening. Like, that's fucking erratic. Like, that's fucking erratic. Like, what Trump did during his period of time, and it really does come down, in my view, to the reality that Donald Trump has no ambition. His ambition is to just be the president, right? Like, that's it. Donald Trump wants to be the president, And once he's the president, he goes golfing. And every so often they like put a form in front of him, and his son and Ivanka say like, yeah, this is good, you should sign it, right? And Trump goes, okay, what a great day, we're doing a great thing today, And he gets to go do interviews and shit and like speak his mind and like do rallies and stuff. But like he's not like, he doesn't have policy ideas. He's not like sitting around being like, we need to make we need to talk to one another about the situation going on in Kentucky. There's something serious going on. Like, no, none of that's happening, right? So in many ways, I actually look at Trump as like kind of an inert president, kind of just like a nothing, like he's as effective as Biden has been, right? Like they're not different. They're not that much different from one another. And in fact, I think you could make the credible argument that Biden has been far more damaging in his life. And but that's like a long form way of going back around to the original point, though, is that Trump makes it too obvious, right? Like Biden and Obama and even Bush, like even the original, like Bush Jr. and Bush Sr. and Clinton and like all these guys, they make like they have there's like a statesman list. There's a statesmanness to it, right? That like they seem competent. They seem like they've got a hold of something, right? They seem as though I'm surrounded by intelligent people, and intelligent people listen to me, and I listen to them, and we've all come to this consensus that we all have to agree that together we're going to move forward together as a competent consensus. Whereas Trump literally was just like, let's shoot guns and be a journalist, yeehaw, yeehaw, right? And he just made it too obvious. And it is too obvious under Trump that, but Trump's not unique. And like, the more you realize that like, these guys are Trump and Trump are these guys, like, the more you realize that like, oh, like, it's always been this way. It's just, now it's so obvious that the traditional allies of America are starting to go like, okay. Because if they're willing to just like ad hoc invade Iraq and just like ad hoc bomb people and just whenever, just do whatever, like how much longer until some of those, like, look what they're doing in Ukraine. Like, how much longer until some of those nations are European nations? Like, really? Like, if I'm the president of France or Spain or Germany, right? Austria, I would definitely be thinking to myself, how much longer until America starts forming coups on us? How much longer until there's a coup that happens in France? How much longer until there's a coup attempt in Germany? How much longer? Right? I would definitely be thinking about that. Like, we've seen America literally launch a coup against every single South American nation. We've seen them literally drop bombs all across Africa, throughout South Asia, right? The history of North America is riddled in coups and bombs. And literally the only thing that's been protecting these European nations is that we also are white. How much longer until that's not enough? How much longer until it shifts over? Until there's a form of purity that needs to be attained? Where, like, you're not Christian enough. Right? We're almost already there. Like, I would want to be leaning harder on stable nations if that were the case. The 4 million who quit their jobs last month should march on Day of Awesomeness. Yeah, oh yeah. And honestly, like, I think that everybody should bail on this economy, if you want to call it that, right? Like, I think even using the word economy to describe what we're doing is a bit generous. Like, this isn't really an economy; it's a cult. That's what it is. Like, an economy would be like economy is a scientific term. I think that's the way that I should be describing this. Is that the word economy is actually a scientific term to describe a scientific process, right? That involves people and involves this kind of stuff. But nothing that we're doing is engaging in anything remarkably scientific, not even remotely. It is a religious ideology. That is what we are doing. It is a religious ideology that we are espousing that has no basis in anything even remotely close to reality. And the people who defend the cult will never use science, evidence, facts, reason, right? They pretend like they do, but fundamentally their arguments just come down to, well, you need to work harder, pull yourself up, personal responsibility, individualism. It's like, but none of that has anything to do with anything. Like, literally. And so we should stop we should stop participating in this cult and start actually talking about economics as a science, because it is. Troops appear to me to have been and still is following the alt-right plans of destruction of the U.S. government by starving the beast. Troop appears to me to have been... I don't know what troop is. Who's troop? Yeah. In the last 20 years, the U.S. has gone from polling as most trusted nation 20 years ago to today's most feared nation. Yeah. Cult is funny considering our money relies entirely on faith. Well, and that's the nature of money. And the difference, though, is that we worship money. That's the big difference, right? Like, all forms of currency and all forms of money are kind of based on like a faith, right? You kind of take it on faith that, well, you must have done something productive in order to earn this money, and so I trust that that's like a common commodity and all that kind of stuff, right? There is like a faith element to it, but the difference between what other nations do with money and what we do with money is that we worship money. Like that's what you're talking about when you're talking about the profit motive, right? Like you've said several times here that there's a profit motive, right? And that's the problem with a lot of things that you see. Well, another way of thinking about that is just money worship, right? That the goal for all things is to attain the most amount of money. And the person who has the most amount of money should be considered the most revered person in the society, which is why we're supposed to care about the opinions of these dullards, Bezos, Musk, and Gates, who are just like dimwits as far as I'm concerned. Bezos is literally an idiot. Like, just straight up, like, just listen to him talk. He sounds like a moron, because he is. Musk has like significant daddy issues, and it's really, really obvious. Like he obviously just was never loved by his father, which makes sense because his dad was a slave owner in apartheid South Africa, owned emerald mines. And like Gates looks like a little boy, like even now. And someone like Zuckerberg, for example, like Zuckerberg is stuck at 6. You ever notice this? Like, look at him. He looks like a 6-year-old. And when he talks, he sounds like a 6-year-old. When he went and talked to Congress, it really looked like a 6-year-old pretending to be an adult. Because he just never grew up. He just always has been that age. And like, these guys are stuck in this religious belief that is about worshiping money. And if you worship money, the person who worships money the best is the best person. That's why when you say we should put a cap on wealth, that's like a hard line for these guys. They like will not negotiate on that, right? You'll get like psychopaths like Kevin O'Leary saying like, you want to punish success. It's like, yes, I would like to punish successful psychopaths. Absolutely. Absolutely, I would like to do that. And the reason why they can't accept a cap on wealth is because they worship it. You're literally saying, let's destroy God. Like, literally, that is what they believe. That if you punish success, like, you're destroying their God. And there is 100% like a religious aspect to this. Like, we pretend as though we live in a secular society, but the reality is we've just supplanted all of the traditional religious iconography with money and other kind of iconic figures, right? That like, if you work in a bank, you might as well work in a temple. Like and the transition has been pretty seamless, honestly. Like we stop worshiping God, so we worship money instead. Too many migrants shift Europe, not pure. See Steve Bannon. Ugh, Steve Bannon. Yeah, I loved Alan Greenspan after a lifetime career in monetary policy. I was wrong. Yeah, Alan Greenspan was a very effective tool for the billionaire class, for sure. Modern, and I mean, it's all great now that he's out to be like, oh, I was wrong, by the way. Ha ha ha. I'm trying to maintain my intellectual credibility or my moral credibility somehow. Yeah, modern politics follow the ABCs, anything but class. Yeah, that's why it's all got to be identity politics, right? The she-cession, all that kind of shit. The problem is not these individuals, it is the profit motive that is the underlying issue. Profit does not care about anything but more. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, and as long as you are pursuing money, as long as you are pursuing this endless growth idea that you can have an endless, like, number go up perpetually, then you're never actually confronted with, well, what is the meaning of life? What is the point of being here? Right? If you can deceive yourself into believing that the point is just to accrue this number endlessly, and then take that number and give it to your prodigy so that you can attain some kind of immortality, right? Like that is how they think about this. That like, I'm going to take my wealth and pass it on to my children, and then they will pass it on to their children, and my bloodline will be immortal, right? We'll go down in history, and the history books will talk about us, and we'll be the greatest generation of this generation, right? Like it's that kind of crazed, like fundamental, like seeking immortality crazed nonsense that humans get into all the fucking time. And we should just put an end to it. We just put an end to it. Like get rid of this shit. It's so fucking garbage. Like nobody gives a shit about your fucking immortality. Like nobody cares, dude. Like you look like a fucking loser. Like we're not looking at you going like, wow, they did it. We're really looking at you being like, wow, they did it. Like, ew. And if we eliminated that, then it would force these types of people to actually begin asking more serious questions about what is the point of any of this? Why are they here? Okay, you can't pursue this meaningless thing that actually destroys the civilization and the society. So what should you prove? Like, what should you do with your time? The robot army is not going to be created to fight nation against nation. It will be designed to protect the means of production from us destroying it once we have no jobs. Yeah. Toronto actually banned robots on the street. So, like, if a robot's, like, trundling down the street, we got rid of them, which I'm like, great. It's like the first thing we've done right in like 5 years. Get rid of the if you see robots run around on your streets, fucking destroy those. Fucking get rid of them. I can't believe it. Can't believe people are even considering it. Like, yeah, okay. Like, maybe if we lived in like a Star Trek society where there's like all this beneficial, like all this kind of stuff. Like, maybe, sure. But we're ruled by rapacious psychopaths. No thanks. Not interested in them having robots. Not, full stop. Don't think that little robot from Boston Dynamics is cute. Don't think it's cool that Jeff Bezos is sending like a blimp full of drones into the cities. Nope. None of that. Thanks. Get fucked. Thanks for this first show for me since donating. Hey, I'm so glad to hear that, Frog. That's so nice. Happy New Year to you, Onward. You're just sneaking in right as I'm about to close the show down. And that's a good reminder. Think about donating, guys. I got a Patreon down below. Even $1 helps. You get into my Discord if you donate $1. If you donate $5, I'll give you all my music. If you donate more than that, I'll send any of my art your way. Oh, goodness. Always remember, guys, and for the new ones, this might sound odd, but you can challenge me on it some other day, and I'll talk more about it. But I believe it, or I acknowledge it. You are a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to convince you that that is not what's going on. Because they know that if you figure it out, you'll realize you're just as valid and as important as they are. And if you realize that, it's much harder to enslave you. Fuck them. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.